Hello, and welcome to the Sleepless Physicist. I'm glad you found your way here. You can loosen your shoulders now. Let your jaw soften. Let your thoughts set down whatever they were carrying. You are safe here. Nothing is urgent. Feel the cool rim of the pillowcase against your skin. Feel warmth gathering in your fingertips like quiet embers. Notice the night air, almost weightless, grazing your cheek as if it were learning your name. You don't have to perform for the dark. The dark is already on your side. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. One more time. Slowly. Inhale. You are safe. And exhale. You are already moving. Maybe today asked too much. Maybe a worry kept resurfacing like a small wave that didn't know how to stop. Maybe you measured your worth against a list and forgot that breath is a form of worth. Tonight, you can set the list down. Tonight, you are allowed to be carried. You lie very still. The world would call it stillness. And yet inside this stillness, something is quietly widening. The room is not larger than before, and still it feels roomier, as if the walls had learned a softer angle. The same bed, the same pillow, but more space to rest inside. The mind finds a window that wasn't there in the afternoon. It opens without a sound. Above the ceiling, there is a sky you cannot see, and above that sky, there is a patience that breathes. The universe does not hurry. It unbuttons. Space stretches like a soft sweater, stitch by stitch, not tearing, not straining, just yielding enough for everything to sit more comfortably in itself. Galaxies drift the way lanterns drift on a lake, when the water itself moves, not because the lanterns row. A grand looseness, a kind of kindness written into the fabric. You are not separate from this. You are. You are the listener of it, the sleeper inside it, the breath that echoes it. You are a participant, not a spectator, even if your eyes are closed. Maybe you were taught that motion is a matter of footsteps and engines, but you are moving now without leaving. You are moving because the room that holds you is moving, and the room that holds that room is moving, and the larger room of space itself is stretching like a slow tide. Listen with the whole body, not ticking, but flowing, not chatter, but hush, not fiction, but truth, the kind of truth that doesn't shout, the kind that sits in the chair beside your bed and says quietly, I'm here. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. If space can stretch, what happens to the light crossing it? Let that question rest like a polished stone on your palm. You don't need to resolve it yet. You can sleep with a question in your hand. You can sleep with a key and trust that the door will find itself. You are in bed, and you are also somewhere else your mind knows. A place made of ease. Imagine yourself inside a small, quiet capsule of thought. No switches, no panels, only the feeling of gliding over a coastline that sleeps with you. There is a round window, rim cool as the pillow, and a thin bloom of frost at the edge where breath has met glass. Below, towns breathe in patterns of amber. Far beyond, the dark is not empty. It's full of lanterns too distant to name. You do not steer. You are carried. Even the capsule doesn't move through a road. The road stretches under it, gentle and endless. You look, and in looking, you soften. The lanterns do not chase each other. They simply notice more room appearing between them, like friends on a wide porch leaning back in their chairs. There is no argument in it, no tug of war, just the lake quietly expanding, making space for every reflection to hold still while everything drifts. You are a witness to ease. You are a witness to widening. You are a witness to the way the world can be large without being loud. Maybe this is what home feels like when it finally remembers it's allowed to be spacious. Are you still if the room itself is moving? Does stillness belong to you or to the frame that carries you? Place that question beside the first. 2 stones side by side, cool and reassuring in the palm. You do not need to decide. Your only task is to breathe and to notice that breathing is a kind of answer. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Let your attention settle on the second hand of a nearby clock. It doesn't jump. It pours, honey drawn along a quiet thread. Each moment lengthens just enough to land without spilling. You sense a rhythm you don't have to keep, because it keeps you. Time is not a drum. Tonight it is a cello. The note doesn't push. It holds you may remember a day when you were told to keep up. Tonight the night keeps you up, not awake, but upheld. You float as thoughts unclench. You float because even your thoughts belong to something wider. You are part of an unfolding where effort is not the price of belonging. Belonging is given in the act of being here. You are 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 here. Above the roof, beyond the patient air, something like a sigh goes on, and everything you have ever worried will not fit, fits. The sky makes room, and then a little more. You do not see it. You feel its courtesy, a slow, generous loosening that asks nothing in return. You can unravel here. Nothing is urgent. If a thought tugs your sleeve, you can tell it gently. We can talk tomorrow. Tonight we are widening. The thought will wait. The night will hold it for you in the margin. There is margin now, white space around the words of your day. The sentence of you can breathe between its clauses. You are a shoreline between warm and cool, a shoreline between waking and sleep. Waves arrive, waves recede. Each one writes an old, kind story and then erases it to make room for the next. The erasing is tenderness. The leaving is not loss. It is permission. If space can stretch, what happens to light crossing it? Let the stone warm in your hand. Feel how a question can be a lullaby when it is not forced to answer itself. Feel how curiosity can be softer than certainty. How not knowing can cradle you more gently than knowing ever did. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Maybe you think of a lantern you once saw on water, the way the wake of a breeze widened the distance between floating flames without dimming any of them. The light was not less for being farther. It found more water to paint upon. Tonight your thoughts are lanterns too. Let them drift without hurry. Further apart means more reflection, more room for each to glow. You are allowed to rest inside paradox. You are allowed to be both still and carried, both small in your bed and endless in your belonging. The room that gently widens is not a trick of perspective. It is a kindness of perception, a kindness you can return to your own body, to your own mind, tonight and any night you choose. Feel the pillow again, the cool rim, the warmth in your fingertips, the soft graze of air. This is a constellation you can always navigate by. 3 stars, cool, warm, whisper, align them, and you will find your way back to the harbor of sleep. The promise of the night is simple. You will feel the world expanding without having to hold it up. You will feel yourself included without having to raise your hand. You will feel answers arriving like fog, not like thunder. And when you wake, the kindness will still be true. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Let the edges of the day blur. The outlines soften. What you carried begins to set itself down in orderly, quiet piles. Not because you forced it, but because night is persuasive in a language older than words. You are fluent in that language, so even when you forget, each slow breath reminds you. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You are allowed to take up space inside yourself. The mind is a house with more rooms than maps. Doors you thought were walls begin to open, noiselessly. A hinge that never resisted, only waited for you to lean. A step that is only weight shifting. And then, there, another room of softness appears. You learn that spaciousness is not a gift from outside, but something you uncover by relaxing the hand that's been clenched all day. A thought returns to check on you, as thoughts do. You greet it without rising from your chair. Thank you for watching over me. We can talk in the morning. It rests at the threshold, content to be seen. You do not need to push it away. Gentleness is stronger than pushing. It always was. You notice how quiet contains its own textures, the near silent drift of air, the faintest creak like an old story remembering itself, the soft persistence of heartbeat. Each texture is a thread, and every thread leads somewhere kind. Follow one, or simply let them weave around you until you feel worn into the fabric. Safe not because the world stopped moving, but because you learned that movement can hold you. This is not fiction. It's truth. The truth that the room you trust is nested inside larger rooms you can trust all the way out. The room of breath, the room of night, the room of sky, the room of the universe, which does not explode outward like a shout, but opens like a sigh, not ticking, but flowing, not rigid, but forgiving. You are not still. Even now you move through time, not metaphorically, literally, yet the movement asks nothing of you. You are carried as surely as a leaf is carried on a wide, slow river, turning only when the water turns, arriving wherever the water arrives, never alone. If space can stretch, what happens to the light crossing it? The question turns in your hand like a coin with two calm faces. One side says later, the other says rest. Both sides are permission. You place the coin on the bedside table of the mind and know it will be there when you wake. You are. You are becoming softer around the edges. You are remembering that softness is not the opposite of strength, but one of its forms. You are letting go of the need to name everything before you can love it. Names can wait. Love doesn't mind the wait. Are you still if the room itself is moving? Perhaps stillness is not the absence of motion, but the trust that motion is friendly. Perhaps stillness is a relationship, not a condition. You let that idea hover at arm's length, the way a lantern hovers over water without touching it. Reflection does the touching for you. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. There is an ease in repeating truths until they sink below hearing and become feeling. You repeat them the way water repeats its shape around a stone. You are safe, again. You are already moving, again. And beneath the words, a quieter understanding. You belong. You belonged before the words, and you will belong after them. The mind drifts to the simplest measurements. A single second, the weight of it, like fruit in the hand, the taste of it, like a syllable rolled on the tongue. Seconds are not units you must collect. They are notes that pass through you and leave you more resonant. The clock keeps pouring them like warm tea. Time is not a line you must march along. It is a room you inhabit, a cello note you can lean against without needing to understand the math of its vibration. You consider how kindness widens everything it touches. When you offer kindness to your own breathing, your breath deepens. When you offer kindness to your own thoughts, your thoughts untangle. When you offer kindness to this very moment, the moment seems to make more room. The universe practices the same art at a grander scale, kindness written into distance, generosity stitched into the spaces between things. You are quietly practicing the cosmology of compassion. The space between one breath and the next is not empty. It is full of patience. The space between one star and the next is not empty. It is full of the same, different scales, same tenderness. Every gap becomes a cradle when you look at it that way. If you listen closely, you hear how questions soften when no one demands an answer from them. What happens to light? Are you still? What is the shape of rest? All of them become lullabies when sung without urgency. The mind that insisted on conclusions earlier today can, at night, prefer contours over edges. This preference is not ignorance. It is wisdom choosing the right tool for the hour. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You sense how repetition isn't redundancy. Each return is a deepening, like walking the same path at dusk, then in moonlight, then at first light. The path is the same, the seeing isn't. Each breath is the same, the belonging isn't. You revisit the sentence, you are not still. It means more now, but it also means less. It means you can stop trying to keep pace with anything. There is no pace to keep. You are within the pace itself. You are a listener at the door of a gentle house, a guest who discovers the house has always been yours. You turn the knob. Not even that. You notice the door was never latched. The thought makes you smile in that small way that only you can see. The smile that belongs to relief, not to display. Maybe someone long ago told you the universe is cold, and yet here you are, warmed by the simplest contact. Skin to fabric, breath to air, attention to the present. Warmth is not a property only of temperature. It is a property of welcome. The universe welcomes you by making room, by never once requiring you to be elsewhere than where you are in order to belong to it. You let the mind linger on two images that feel like they rhyme, a second hand flowing like honey, distant points of light sliding imperceptibly farther apart. Both motions are slow enough for peace, slow enough for sleep to approach without startling, slow enough that you can follow if you wish, or close your eyes and be followed by them. You are not obligated to stay awake to feel the kindness of expansion. The kindness continues whether you watch it or wear it like a blanket. You have permission to stop watching, to simply wear. If space can stretch, what happens to the light crossing it? A last time, you hold the quiet coin. The answer is not needed tonight. The question itself is a pillow. You place your head on it. You discover that curiosity, when it doesn't clench, is the softest place to rest. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. And as the breath goes on keeping you, the mind allows a final gentle echo. The room that gently widens is the same room you began in. Nothing changed, and everything changed. Same bed, same body, more mercy, same ceiling, more sky, same second hand, more music, two scenes, one breath. The nearness of the familiar, the nearness of the infinite, both near enough to hold, both near enough to let go. Rest in that nearness. Let it be the last thing you notice and the first thing you forget as sleep arrives. The forgetting is part of the gift. The night remembers on your behalf. You have done enough. You are enough. You are being carried. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You arrive at the ragged edge of a long day. Thoughts like loose threads and tugging. Breath a little shallow from all the holding on. And yet even here, a softer music begins. Not a siren, but a chamber piece. A low cello note that knows exactly how to speak to the part of you that has been standing guard. It doesn't command. It coaxes. It doesn't prove. It soothes. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You notice the weight that covers you, how it settles with perfect memory, how it agrees to bear a little of what you carried. The air isn't silent at all when you let yourself listen. There is the small, faithful hush that has stayed with you through 1,000 nights. And under that hush, a pulse. Not loud, never asking for attention, a private metronome that says, "Stay. Nothing is urgent. We will go slowly together." You have been trained to answer alarms, but tonight you are invited to answer quiet, to meet it like an old friend at a familiar doorway. You do not hurry to fill it. You let quiet speak first. And it says something simple. There is more room than you thought. The mind has a way of shrinking itself to fit the day's containers. The list, the task, the bright rectangle of obligation. You forget the sky because ceilings are so convincingly close. But the truth matters here now, because truth, when whispered, is a maker of space. The universe widens, and when you remember this, the mind takes a lesson. It widens too, corners soften, tightness loosens, and the feeling that everything must be solved before you earn rest dissolves like a sugar cube in warm tea. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You begin to measure your worries differently, not by their noise, but by their shoreline. Every thought that once felt endless reveals itself as a small curve of coast, a shape that the tide can touch. With each breath, the tide arrives, and with each breath, it recedes, and the coast is redrawn in quiet ways that do not demand your supervision. The miracle is not that the ocean works. The miracle is that you can let it. The same breath that leaves your lungs can be imagined as a wind that travels farther than your walls. It is not a metaphor designed to impress you. It is a kindness designed to include you. A tiny movement here, a hair's breadth there, and somewhere in that grand, patient distance, there is a pair of lights that now keep company from just a little farther away. It happens without violence. It happens without news. And yet it changes everything because it means spaciousness is the rule, not the exception. You are not an onlooker. You are woven into the fabric that stretches. Your atoms learned their steps in older fires than any story you've been told about yourself. And what the fabric does, you feel, maybe not in numbers, but in ease. The widening grants permission to unclench, to pause, to believe, if only for this hour, that gentleness is not a luxury tacked onto life when the real work is done, but part of the real work itself. Wonder, serenity belonging 3 notes that arrive in order, and then again, and then again. You hear the chord take shape. Wonder because the world is larger than your day allowed. Serenity because largeness is not chaos when it is steady. Belonging because the steady largeness makes a place for you without conditions. The trio plays low enough that you can fall asleep to it, low enough that you begin to hum along without realizing. Not stillness, but stillness in motion. You rest, yes, but you rest inside a gentle moving thing. Not certainty, but kindness toward mystery. You do not clamp around answers. You cradle the part of you that still wants to know. Kindness is the light you leave on for questions so they won't be afraid of the dark. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. If the universe grows, will it one day pull apart everything we love? You ask it softly, because fierce questions can be whispered and still be true. You place the question where it can breathe, not under the pillow where it will smother, not on your chest where it will weigh, somewhere near, like a book you will read when morning is kind enough to offer coffee and time. You do not force peace by forbidding questions. You allow peace by trusting their timing. The answer will come later, and it will come gently. You do not need to hold the whole of it tonight. You only need to hold the belief that an answer is possible without haste. You return to the refrain because repetition is not a loop that traps you. It is a path that takes you deeper each time your foot finds it. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The blanket carries its small gravity. It invites the shoulders to drop their armor. The hush becomes a topography you can navigate by touch alone. The pulse is a guide who never gets lost. And in that guidedness, something in you lifts its head and looks around. The part of you that knows curiosity as a tenderness rather than a demand resurfaces. This is the turning from the first color of welcome to the deep blue of gentle questioning. You do not open a gate. A gate opens by itself. You simply notice and walk through. You may have misunderstood belonging. Perhaps you were told it arrives after you perform, after you manage, after you impress. But belonging here is not a trophy. It is a property of being. You belong because you breathe, because this widening fabric has already accounted for you, because even in your smallest moment, you are part of something that refuses to be small. Every star you've loved is farther tonight than last night. Gently and lawfully, this is not a threat. This is the way the lake makes space for lanterns to keep shining without colliding. The distance is not a punishment. It is a promise that light can travel without being swallowed. When you hear it this way, your chest loosens a notch you didn't know was tight. You realize that what you cherish doesn't need to be clutched to be kept. That closeness is not always about distance. Sometimes it is about clarity, about the unforced knowledge that something remains even when you stop holding it up. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You practice a different kind of listening now. You listen for the small ways your body says yes, the longer breath, the softened gaze even behind closed eyes, the way a word like room lands and expands in your chest. Language can be a muscle that clenches or a ribbon that unfurls. Tonight, every word is ribbon. Even the ones that carry science inside them are dressed for sleep, nothing sharp, nothing hurried, only images that agree to be set down when you grow heavy. You are on a threshold between everyday perception and something more intimate with the grandness you live in. A rite of passage that asks no ceremonies beyond patience, breath, and attention. Whispers, images, breath, these are sufficient. They always were. You step by breathing. You learn by resting. You cross by remembering that crossing can be gentle. And as you settle into this understanding, the mind begins to lean toward a story, not a loud one, a quiet teaching from a time when we first learned to read the sky's own exhale. You do not need dates or names yet, only the feeling that a whisper from long ago is almost here, and it will arrive the way all true things arrive in the night, soft-footed, unassuming, certain without being stern. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You feel the day loosening its grip. The mind tests the space and finds that it holds. You test it again and it still holds. Repetition becomes trust. Trust becomes ease. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Why this truth and why tonight? Because the body keeps score of alarms, and the alarms have had their turn. Because a softer measure can retune the instrument you live in. The widening of the universe is not drama to watch. It is a key you can carry. It unlocks a different room in your thinking. A room where gentleness is logical, where patience is efficient, where compassion is not an afterthought, but an operating principle. You practice it on a small scale first, one breath longer than the last, one muscle unclenched, one thought permitted to be incomplete. The small scales make music, the larger scales echo it, the same pattern embossed on different sizes of reality. Your breath out, the world out, your breath in, the world able to hold you. You are not an onlooker. You are woven into the fabric that stretches. Threads cross you and continue beyond you. The pattern does not pause at your edges. When you remember this, loneliness bends. It doesn't vanish. It changes shape. It becomes the kind that invites company instead of the kind that denies it. Belonging arrives not as a crowd around you, but as a quiet recognition within you. I am included already. Wonder, serenity, belonging. The triplet returns, not as a concept, but as a rhythm your body recognizes. Wonder tilts the head. Serenity softens the chest. Belonging warms the center. The three move through you, the way waves move through a shoreline. No wave insists. Each one does enough and then yields to the next. Not stillness, but stillness in motion. You rest inside movement that cares for you, not certainty, but kindness toward mystery. You do not force answers to clock in for the night shift. You let them sleep too. You learn to trust that a question can be your companion, not your supervisor. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. A soft fact arrives and sits down beside you without fuss. Every star you've loved is farther tonight than last night. Gently and lawfully, The sentence doesn't raise your pulse, it lowers it, because lawfulness is a kind of lullaby when it is gentle, because farther does not mean lost. It means the map can grow and still keep track. It means light can keep arriving across more room than before. You notice how fear often pretends to be necessary, how it whispers that vigilance is love, but love does not need you to clench. Love needs you to stay, to be present, to be clear, to be kind. The widening helps you see this. Distance can serve closeness when it is part of a generous pattern. When there is room, there is less crowding. Less crowding means clearer lines. Clearer lines mean less confusion. Less confusion feels like truth. If the universe grows, will it one day pull apart everything we love? The question returns because it is honest. You set it gently on the mantle of the mind and let it glow there, unsolved, as a promise that care will be taken with it later. You remind yourself, not every door must open at once. Not every path must be walked tonight. Rest is also a form of respect for complexity. You learn a different kind of strength, the strength that doesn't brace, the strength that opens. Opening is not weakness. It is the architecture of endurance. Structures that survive are the ones that flex without breaking. So you practice flexion in thought, in breath, in how you hold your stories. You let them be true without letting them be small. You are the place where largeness learns to be intimate, the place where the macro becomes personal. You do not need to grip the cosmos to belong to it. You need only to let its pattern echo in smaller and smaller rooms until it becomes the way you treat yourself. Widening, patience, permission. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You look inward, not to escape the world, but to meet it where it meets you. The pulse is there. The hush is there. The weight that holds without pinning is there. These are the local forms of a universal kindness. They are proof enough for tonight. They are credentials stamped by existence itself. You are here. You are carried. You are allowed. You might have believed calm requires completion, that tranquility waits behind a door labeled done. Tonight you discover calm has its own door. It opens from your side. It opens when you make a little room. It opens when you say, this can rest, and so can I. In that opening, curiosity becomes safe again. Safe to ask, to wonder, to imagine, to postpone. The mind relearns play without pressure. And play, even this quiet play, is how understanding grows roots, wonder, serenity, belonging, again the chord. You hum it without sound. The melody extends into a single, held note, a cello in a long room. The note doesn't waver, it only deepens. You don't chase it, you lean into it. It holds. You are not a passenger bolted into a seat while the universe drags you somewhere. You are a partner with a vote, and your vote tonight is for softness, for slowness, for the kind of learning that leaves you rested rather than wrung out. This vote counts. It changes your inner climate. The systems inside you respond. Shoulders down, breath broader, pulse steady, thoughts less vertical, more meadow. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. A small practice rises, so small it looks like nothing. Notice one true thing and let it be enough. The weave of fabric against skin, the exact weight of the blanket, the angle of breath between in and out. One true thing is a bridge. Cross it, and you are on ground that does not tilt. One true thing is all the proof you need that reality is available without strain, and when reality is available, fear begins to retire for the night. If the universe grows, will it one day pull apart everything we love? You touch the question again, like checking the warmth of a kettle. You don't pour yet. You simply acknowledge the heat and trust your timing. Trust is not passive. It is active rest. It is the decision to align with steadiness rather than hurry. You align, and now, as the blue of curiosity settles into a deeper shade, you sense a quiet approach, not the weight of explanation, The weightlessness of a story told softly enough to fall asleep to, a story about how we learned to notice the widening and to measure its hush. You don't need details yet, only the invitation, the hint that someone once listened so patiently to the night that the night answered. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You let the last lines of this moment trail into a promise. You will feel, not just hear, how a single observation taught us to read the sky's slow exhale. You will be shown gently, and you will not be asked to hold more than feels kind. A whisper will arrive from a century away, and it will arrive like all good things in the dark, softly, on time, without knocking. For now, keep the rhythm that steadies everything. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. And let the next step appear not as a step, but as a door that opens of its own accord. You have done enough for this moment. The rest will meet you where you are. You return to the gentle capsule of attention you've been learning to trust. The roundness of your awareness is like a window rimmed with silver cool. Within that circle, distance becomes tender instead of sharp. Below, somewhere you cannot name precisely, a coastline of quiet lives on. Farther out, the dark is full of slow embers, not urgent, not performing, just present deep under glass. Nothing in you needs to rush. The night has never required speed. You are held at a pace that feels like a hand on the shoulder. When you breathe, the world seems to breathe with you, out and out. Not a command, a rhythm, not a drum, a long note. You let yourself drift toward a time when someone listened to the sky long enough for it to answer. It is the 1920s in spirit, but dates are only furniture. What matters is patience. Patience turned into method. Glass plates laid like quiet mirrors, catching the faintest signatures of far places. Patient eyes returning to the same specks, night after night, the way you return to your breath. Each return a little truer because of repetition. Each look adding gentleness to the seeing. You meet a name softly, Hubble, arriving not as a lesson, but as a whisper. A person who watched light and heard in it a story about distance. A candle seen through deepening dusk will redden, not because it changes its flame, but because the path between you and it lengthens. And so it was with galaxies. The farther they were, the more their light shifted toward that evening hue. Farther did not merely mean fainter, it meant redder, the color of lengthened journeys. You are invited to feel the pattern rather than recite it. A felt law moves through you. Farther means faster, a slow, lawful metronome the universe keeps without glancing at any clock, out and out. The breath of a room learning to be larger. There is no chasing here, not a race through space, but space itself unfolding, like fabric that has decided to loosen by a stitch with every sigh. You rest in antithesis because it rocks you. Not pursuit, but patience. Not sprinting lanterns, but a lake that widens. Not friction, but a giving way. What you thought of as velocity becomes hospitality. The room makes room, and in that making, distances appear like gentle corridors between friends who have learned to sit apart and still feel together. You glance back at your bedside world and find it woven to the same pattern. The pillow is an instrument tuned to comfort. The window of mind is an eye tuned to kindness. Both are tools for listening. Both are proof that perception can be softened without being made vague. Clarity does not require hardness. It can arrive like warm light coming through a thin curtain. Everything visible, nothing harsh. You let a question float to the surface, buoyant and unafraid. If galaxies are lanterns, what is the water that moves them? What is the lake that widens? You are not collecting points for rapid answers. You are collecting ease, the ease of letting a question keep you company. A gentle hint comes and sits beside you. The widening belongs to the room itself. The lake is learning a larger shape. The movement is not the lanterns pushing past one another. It is the lake's quiet decision to hold more sky. You tuck away an image you will return to when the bread is ready to rise. Raisins in warm dough. They do not run, they are carried. As the dough expands, the spaces between them grow, and none of them has to prove anything to participate. You smile with your breath, because this is how you wish your days worked too. No sprinting, only being carried by something generous enough to include you without tests. You hear under everything the low music of the law. Farther means faster, yet the word faster has been taught to you by noise. Here it means something else. It means a larger interval of comfort between lights. It means a grander canvas that refuses to crowd what it contains. Faster becomes freer, an airy syllable rather than a sharp one. Your body understands before your thoughts do, and that is allowed. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You sense how often in life you were told that value arrives with effort, and yet this truth arrives with acceptance. The sky does not clench to widen. You don't either. You are a witness rather than a worker tonight, a listener rather than a lifter. The widening happens, and your part is to feel its kindness, to let that kindness remind your nervous system that alarms can rest, and that curiosity can speak in a quiet voice. The whisper from the old observatory blends with your present breathing. Glass plates become breaths, patient eyes become patient inhales, data becomes comfort. It is a beautiful trick the world can do. Take a measurement and let it turn into mercy. The mercy that says you need not hold everything. Close to keep it. Sometimes distance is a way of caring, making room so glow can stay glow. If galaxies are lanterns, what is the water that moves them? The question remains, luminous and calm. You are told, without terms to memorize, that the water is the room itself. The lake broadens, the fabric yields, the corridor lengthens. You do nothing, and yet you participate. What a relief. Participation without performance, belonging without effort. Nothing is urgent. The sky has always expanded slowly around you. Not once today did it demand your permission. Not once tonight will it demand your vigilance. You are learning to match its tempo, long, patient, repeating, out and out, the metronome of a universe that prefers steadiness to spectacle. Stay here for a moment. Let the cadence seat itself. You will soon touch the red thread more closely. Listen for its tone, the way a fingertip listens to a cello string stretched under a soft bow. But not yet, not until your breathing and the metronome agree on gentleness. Not until your shoulders accept that knowledge can be a comforter as well as a compass. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You linger with the quiet discovery, as if it were a cup you can warm your hands around. The pattern does not rush you. It meets you where you breathe. Farther means faster. You let the pairing settle, not like a rule to memorize, but like a cadence your body can keep without thinking. Out and out, distance married to tempo, a vow the night has kept for longer than names have had letters. When you first learned about motion, it wore hard shoes. It stomped. Here, motion is barefoot, soft steps you barely hear, lights that do not sprint, yet end up farther apart because the floor itself stretches under them. You sense how gentle truths can be, how they can lift a weight by simply showing you there is more table to set it on. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You turn inwardly to the way attention changes what it touches. When you attend to fear, fear gets louder. When you attend to rhythm, rhythm steadies you. You choose rhythm, the slow metronome of a widening room, the long syllables of a universe in no hurry. It is a companionship you can rely on, a pace that won't abandon you for not keeping up, a pace that carries you for simply being present. There is comfort in imagining the old patience that brought this to light, the same point of sky visited again and again, a willingness to wait for the faint to declare itself, the line between seeing and almost seeing drawn thinner and thinner until the almost becomes yes. You recognize yourself in that process. How many times have you returned to your own breath before it finally allowed you to inhabit it? Repetition is devotion, and devotion is quiet strength. You revisit the candle in dusk image and let it do the teaching, further away, redder, not because the flame dreams of scarlet, but because the path grows long and the color lengthens with it. Light carries news of distance in the shade it wears. You begin to trust color as memory, the kind of memory that doesn't argue. It just arrives and settles where it belongs. Not a chase through space, but space itself unfolding. You repeat this because it smooths the mind. It releases the jaw's insistence. You can feel the difference. Chasing tightens, unfolding releases. One narrows the forehead, the other loosens the brow. Your face learns the law along with your thoughts. The lesson is written in muscles as much as in meanings, and then the homely metaphor you tucked away earlier becomes warm enough to serve. Raisins in dough, they do nothing. The warmth does the work. Expansion is a hospitality, not a test. Each raisin keeps its shape. None is required to stretch itself thin to make room. They are carried apart by the generosity of what holds them. You try the sentence on yourself. I am carried apart from what would crowd me by the generosity of what holds me. It fits, it eases. It allows you to bless distance when distance is kindness. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. If galaxies are lanterns, what is the water that moves them? You listen again for the answer. You're not collecting points to give. The water is the room. The lake is the widening. The medium is the motion. You picture nothing but the sense of a thing that makes room for itself gracefully. The moment you stop picturing it, the feeling stays. That is enough. Knowledge can be a feeling first and a term later. Tonight, feeling is the right size. You measure your life by this gentleness and find it useful right away. Not everything that drifts away is loss. Sometimes the spaces between commitments need to grow so each commitment can glow. Sometimes two people love better with a little more porch between their chairs. Sometimes a thought you clung to is brighter when it is a step farther from your face. The cosmos practices a wisdom you can borrow without paperwork. The pattern suggests one more kindness. The law is steady whether or not you look. It doesn't need your vigilance to keep cadence. This frees you. You can sleep. The night does not require your supervision to remain night. Discovery happened because someone watched, yes, but also because the sky kept its promise, even when no one did. The promise is larger than the witness. Your rest is not a betrayal of truth. It is a trust in it. You lean a little more into calm and notice how questions change when calm holds them. If galaxies are lanterns, what is the water? If distance means redder, what does red feel like when it arrives? Questions soften when they know they won't be punished for staying questions. You let them recline. Answers will stretch beside them when the hour ripens. You may find yourself surprised by how personal this becomes. The pillow as instrument, tuned to cradle, the inner window as eye tuned to wonder. The same you who once thought the universe was far is the you who now senses its pattern close to the skin. Intimacy doesn't always mean nearness. Sometimes it means resonance. Two notes sounding together across a room share more truth than two objects pressed tight without music. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The old whisper becomes a promise for what comes next. You will touch the red thread more directly, fingertip to string. You will listen for the way a stretched note lowers, sweetens, lengthens. You won't need numbers to hear it. You won't need charts to trust it. You will hear because you know what lengthening feels like in your own breath. You will trust because the feeling will rhyme with something you already carry. For now, keep the cadence, farther, faster, slower in feeling, faster in law, a paradox that tucks you in rather than tangling you. The universe's slow metronome counts out the lullaby, and the lullaby carries you where learning and resting stop pretending to be different things. They become one motion, out and out. You settle a little deeper into the cadence you've been learning, not a march, a sway. The universe keeps time gently and lets you keep it too, out and out, a widening that asks nothing from your muscles and everything from your willingness to trust. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You return quietly to the thought of patient eyes and quiet plates. The lesson is not only what was seen, but how it was seen, by returning, by letting faintness speak on its own schedule, by refusing to confuse urgency with importance. You take that practice into your breathing. You return, you listen. Faintness becomes clear without being forced. The candle in dusk image lengthens again, showing you more of its meaning. Distance dresses light in evening hues, not to hide it, but to tell you how far it has come. You realize the sky does not only shine, it writes. Color is its handwriting. You read it not with facts tonight, but with the body's sense of what lengthening feels like. A note drawn longer, a step stretched into glide, a sigh that lasts until it doesn't need to last anymore. Not a chase through space, but space itself unfolding. You let the antithesis rock you one more time. You recognize how many parts of your life can be held this way. Not a chase to be adequate, but an unfolding of adequacy that was always there. Not pushing to make room, but letting room reveal itself. This is a transferable skill. Cosmic patience becomes personal permission. A small, kind challenge rises. Can you let farther means faster rest in you without sharpening it into anxiety? Can you let faster be the universe's way of maintaining grace, keeping lights from crowding rather than a cue to brace? You can, because you feel the difference between speed that jostles and tempo that widens. This is tempo. It keeps the aisle clear so the glow of things can pass without bumping. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Raisins in warm dough. You revisit the kitchen of that metaphor and find it even friendlier now. The warmth that makes space is not theatrical. It is close, steady, patient. If you listen carefully, you hear how the metaphor speaks to your day. You do not have to run to be part of a generous change. You can be carried by it. The structures around you can learn to be kinder and take you with them. Your task is not to sprint. It is to stay warm, to stay available to soft expansion. If galaxies are lanterns, What is the water that moves them? The question returns like a tide you can predict. You feel the answer in your bones before your mind reaches for any words. The water is the widening itself. The lake is more lake. The room is more room. Movement is the consequence of generosity, not aggression. This reframing matters because it teaches you to look for generosity in motion wherever you can, in conversations, in plans, in endings, and to prefer the motions that widen. Another question arrives to keep company with the first. If distance can be kindness, what else have you misread as loss that was actually grace? What silence was space being made? What pause was the room adjusting its shape around you? You do not need to inventory answers. You only need to feel the possibility. It's enough to change the way your chest holds itself. You glance inward at your instruments, the pillow as instrument, the inner window as eye, both tuned by now to hush. You realize that the method of calm and the content of calm are the same here. To understand a widening universe, you widen your attention. To feel patient law, you practice patient breath. Knowledge imitates itself at every scale. That mirroring is its own assurance. You are aligned. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The whisper from long ago is almost finished, saying what it came to say for now. Not everything, just enough. That distance and tempo keep company. That color remembers the miles. That the universe prefers an exhale that goes on and on. You let these lines stitch into your sense of night until they are no longer separate from rest. They become rest, the way a lullaby doesn't sit beside sleep, but becomes the way you cross into it. You're reminded nothing is urgent. The sky has always expanded slowly around you. Even the surprising parts have the decency to be gentle at the human scale. There is no alarm hidden in this knowledge, only a door that opens onto a larger room where your day has more air and your questions have chairs. Another soft beat of curiosity. If color can carry distance, can your breath carry ease just as reliably? If light records its journey by lengthening, can your thoughts record theirs by softening? You try it and find it true in the smallest way that matters. You soften one idea, it begins to shine more clearly. That is enough proof for now, and so we come to the threshold you were promised. The red thread you've glimpsed from across the room is ready to be touched. Not plucked, not pinned, touched, fingertip to tone. You will listen for meaning the way a fingertip listens to a cello string, not pressing, just meeting, and the note will tell you what distance told it, how journeys leave sweetness in their wake, how length can be lullaby. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Keep the cadence a moment longer, out and out, and when you're ready, let the next door open by itself. No knocking, no announcement, only the quiet arrival of the red ribbon of light, lengthened by the room that loves to make room. You will feel its story more than you will hear it, which is perfect for this hour. For now, rest at the hinge between knowing and dreaming. Both are welcome here. Both belong, and both, tonight, are carried by the same widening that has carried you from the start. Imagine for a moment that starlight could rest across your hand like something you could touch, a ribbon, silk, smooth enough to notice every shift in the air, fine enough to move if you only breathe near it. Its color is the color of where it has been. Its length is the measure of how far it has traveled. Place it across the tip of your finger. You don't grip, you don't pull, you simply notice how it lies there. This ribbon is a story, one that began far from you, in the bright heart of a galaxy, perhaps before the Earth's oceans had learned their tides. Now imagine the space between you and that galaxy beginning to stretch. Not a sudden tug, but the way a sweater loosens when it warms in the sun, stitch by stitch, yielding, and as it yields, the ribbon lengthens. Not because anyone is pulling at either end, but because the very table it rests on is getting larger, and as it lengthens, the ribbon cools in color. The bright blue of a fresh flame settling toward gold, then ember, then the quiet red of heat that has learned to last. We call this redshift, but tonight you can let the name rest. You only need to know that the color remembers the distance, that light carries the news of spaces widening by changing its shade. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Wavelength is the word scientists use for the length of that ribbon, and color is the sound of it, if it could sing. A short ribbon is a high note. A long ribbon is a low one. As the room between galaxy and you expands, the ribbon's note deepens, slides lower on the invisible scale. You may not hear it with your ears, but your eyes, if they could hum, would be singing along. It is not that galaxies are racing through the night like runners across a field. It is that the field itself is stretching, and they are carried on its surface. They could be perfectly still in their own patch of grass, and still the patch beneath them would lengthen. Imagine as a balloon could cool to the touch at first, resting in your hands. You take a pen and dot it here and there, evenly spaced. Then slowly, you warm the air inside. The balloon expands, and the dots move apart, but they do not crawl or leap. They simply ride the widening surface. The galaxies are the dots. The balloon's skin is the room we call space. The warmth that makes it swell is the same mystery that carries lanterns on a lake farther from each other without paddles or currents. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. This is the answer to the first question you were given. What happens to light when space stretches? It lengthens. It cools. It arrives at your eyes as a ribbon with a different color than when it began, carrying in that change the record of the journey. It tells you not only that it exists, but how far it has come and how gently the room has expanded on the way. There is a rhythm to this law, a pulse that the universe keeps. Farther, faster, cooler, each step follows the last, not hurriedly but inevitably, like the phases of the moon, each one folding into the next without a seam. And in the same moment, deep within you, there is another rhythm. Mitochondria inside your cells, turning fuel into the energy of living. Their hum is not unlike the hum of those far galaxies. Different in scale, yes, but both are forms of motion. Both are warm with life. Both are proof that movement can be sustaining rather than exhausting. What moves, really? The dots or the rubber? Is it the galaxies that travel or the skin of space itself? It is the rubber. It is the room. It is the lake that widens, not the lanterns that row. The ribbon in your fingers now feels longer, cooler. You can almost imagine it humming lower in pitch, like a string on a cello loosened just enough to deepen its tone. And if you look through the capsule's window, far away, you might see a single faint ember, the light of a distant galaxy, its ribbon stretched thin by time, its colors softened to a sigh. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You let the ribbon rest, not to forget it, but to feel its weightless weight, a story without edges. And as the story lies there, you notice what has always been true. When the room widens, the ribbon lengthens. When distance deepens, color cools. Farther, faster, cooler. The law hums like a simple lullaby that remembers you. Not a test, a tenderness. Is the ribbon stretched because the lantern that made it is sprinting away from you? Not exactly. You listen again. The lantern hasn't grown anxious. The shore hasn't rushed. The water has widened. This is not a chase through space. It is space itself, loosening its weave and carrying the lanterns along, a lake making room for light, a fabric that yields without tearing, a kindness written into distance. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You test the thought with the simplest touch of attention. When you breathe out, the exhale lengthens. When you soften your jaw, the note of your body drops half a shade. The ribbon does the same. Length becomes color. Color becomes tone. What you can feel in your chest is a cousin of what light feels crossing the patient miles. Pitch and hue bow to the same quiet grammar. Longer means lower. Lower means redder. And redder means the journey has been generous with space. Imagine a field of dots on a soft skin you cannot see the edge of. They seem to drift from one another without ever lifting a foot. Dots do not decide. The skin decides. The motion you notice belongs to the room. You ask lightly, what moves really? The dots or the rubber? And the answer returns with a smile you can sense more than see. The rubber, the room, the lake itself. The ribbon only tells you what the room has done. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You keep the ribbon near and try another angle of comfort. Perhaps you feared that light losing heat is light losing heart. But cooler here is not failure. It is record keeping. The ribbon is not dimmed by indifference. It is softened by history. Distance leaves its signature not as bruise but as lull, like a song sung a little slower because the singer is calm. The red is rest, not retreat. Inside you, another choir holds the same key. Tiny engines turning fuel into life warmth. Rhythms entirely local, and yet in conversation with the larger. The symmetry is not exact. Nothing small is forced to mimic the sky. But kinship is kinship. Motion sustains. Warmth remembers. Life and light both keep honest time. You let a question sit by the ribbon like a companion on a bench. If light lengthens because space stretches, what becomes of its story? You don't rush to solve it. You hold the ends and feel. A longer ribbon carries more of its journey within itself. It arrives at your eyes speaking two truths at once. I am here and I have been far. The shade it wears is a diary, line after line of room becoming roomier. The diary does not scold. It simply opens to the page you need tonight and waits until you're breathing and its margins agree. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. And in that belonging, the question that once sounded like a challenge becomes a lullaby. You can hum without thinking. When space stretches, light lengthens. Length carries tone. Tone carries time. And time tonight carries you. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You pick the ribbon up again and realize it has been quietly teaching you a practice. not a fact to memorize, but a way to remember, a way you can carry into bright days and dim ones without dropping any pieces. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Here is the practice, the red thread in your pocket. Touch, rest one fingertip on the pulse at your wrist, and picture a slim ribbon laid across it. Let the ribbon lengthen in your mind the way an exhale lengthens in your chest. Tone, hear a note in your throat. Settle half a shade lower as your jaw unclenches. Longer becomes lower. You don't force it. You allow it. Hue, imagine the note becoming color, cooling toward red as if evening were arriving softly over water. Touch, tone, hue, length, lower, red. A small ladder you can climb with your eyes closed. It returns you to a kinder room every time. You may carry one more line with you. A pocket law that doesn't scold. When the room widens, light's ribbon lengthens, and what arrives at your eyes carries the record of that kindness in its cooler shade. Not punishment, not loss, simply distance becoming visible as calm. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. If you want a picture to tuck behind the law, keep the lake of lanterns. It doesn't demand that any lantern sprint. The water itself unknots a little more each moment and lets the lanterns drift farther without strain. The reflections grow longer, the colors soften, and all the while the night feels nearer, not farther. This is how a universe can both widen and hold you at once. And if a sharper worry appears, what if farther means gone? You can sit it beside you and offer it tea. Farther here is not exile. It's evidence. The ribbon's length tells you a story written by the room, like tree rings that say, there were generous seasons, like a well-loved shirt that has relaxed, not worn out. You may hear people say speed and away and proportion, and you will be ready without armor. You can translate the conversation back into breath. Farther companions faster, the way a river's widest stretches carry the smoothest current. Not a chase, a tempo, not alarm, a rhythm. You don't have to hold the numbers. You can hold the music. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The depth capsule is not only for the sky. It works on afternoons too crowded with shoulds. Notice what happens when you let the room of your day widen a little. The demands redden into gentler shades. The note of your mind lowers from urgency to presence. You become legible to yourself again. The ribbon makes a small bridge between cosmos and kitchen table and says quietly, the same law of kindness can apply here. You are not asked to believe anything difficult tonight. You are invited to keep company with a feeling that happens to be true. When space stretches, light lengthens. When you allow, you soften. In both cases, force is not the hero. Permission is. You can memorize the capsule in a breath. What stretches? The room, what lengthens. The ribbon, what cools. The color, what calms. The note, what remains. The belonging say it once as a whisper, once as a hum, once as a smile no one but you notices. The third time, it will know the way home on its own. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. There is a sweetness in noticing how the oldest light wears the oldest rooms like shawls. Some threads cool past the reach of your eyes and settle into warmth your skin would understand. Afterglow, not loud, not bright, but faithful. The diary of distances kept in a margin you can read with patience. This is not a cliff. It's a shoreline at night, waves that arrive softer the farther they've come. And if someone asks you later what Redshift felt like, you won't need a lecture. You'll show them with your hands. You'll lay an invisible ribbon across your wrist, lower the note in your throat, and let the color in the room tilt a little toward dusk. You'll say, distance can be gentle, and you will mean both the galaxies and the week you just made it through. You might even notice a kindness you didn't expect, how learning this did not harden you into certainty, but loosened you into friendship with mystery. Not every question needs a fence around it. Some can graze, some can be carried like candles without worrying whether the wick is an equation. Here, the wick is attention. The flame is calm. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The red thread returns to your pocket, but not as homework, as a small tool you know how to use. Whenever the world feels narrow, touch the thread. Whenever thoughts climb to an octave too high, lower the note. Whenever you forget there is room, tilt the color toward evening in your mind and let the room widen by a finger width more. It will be enough for the next breath, and the next. You are ready to step across the threshold that follows this one. The ribbon has taught you to read a sky that exhales slowly, and a life that can do the same. You can carry both without clutching. The room will help. It always has. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The night offers you a low shore to walk without moving. You don't need to learn anything here. You only need to feel your breath arrive, turn, and return. 3 simple waves: arrive, rest, recede. That is enough for this passage. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Let the room remember its gentle widening without your help. The ceiling can be a sky again if it wants. The pillow, a pale shoreline. Your pulse, a lighthouse that blinks without needing to be watched. You are allowed to look away from every list and let the lists keep themselves. Even the clock has softened, its second hand moving like honey, unwilling to hurry anyone to anywhere. Breathe in and notice fabric touch your wrist. Breathe out and notice the way attention makes more room simply by arriving. No new names tonight, no terms to hold, only the shapes you already carry. Lanterns, lake, ribbon, tide. They're here like familiar constellations you can find with your eyes closed. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Somewhere, far from this bed, light is crossing a patient distance, but you don't have to travel with it. You can rest by the window of your own breathing and let the story pass like weather. The lake is wide, the lanterns drift, not because anyone rose, but because the water knows how to make room. You can borrow that wisdom and make room too, not by pushing a thought away, only by setting it down where the wave will reach it and smooth its edges. If a worry arrives, let it sit like a small stone just above the tide line. The water will come to it, touch, withdraw, return. This is not avoidance, it is rhythm. The mind does not have to grip to care. It can care by keeping time. And time in this cove is slow enough to listen back. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Let images turn faint and kind. A silk ribbon laid across a fingertip. No need to name what it meant. Just the feeling of softness remembering where it has been. A scatter of raisins resting in dough, not trying to be anywhere else. A balloon in warm hands, dots that never crawl and still end up farther. Keep them far and gentle, like lights in fog. The point is not to follow them, only to know they are friendly and will be there later if you wish. You can practice a small permission here. The thought that tries to finish the day can loosen its tie and sit with its back to the wall. The feeling that wanted a verdict can uncurl and decide to wait for morning. Even the question that pretended to be urgent can admit it was only loud. In this valley, the volume turns itself down. You don't have to do it. You're just a witness to the dimmer switch. If you like, count the breath not in numbers but in shoreline words. Arrive, rest, recede, arrive, rest, recede. After a while, the words will dissolve and the water will keep the count for you. It's good at that. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Listen for a sound that may or may not be there. The soft mechanical halo of a distant fan. The almost footstep of a car passing like a comet. The slow thread of your own pulse making the covers lift a sigh. These are not distractions. They are the choir that knows the song you're trying to remember. The song with 1 verse and 2 lines. You know it already. You can let the day reassemble itself somewhere behind you while you face the open water of nothing to do. Nothing collapses when you stop holding it up. It turns out the world has been practicing without you all along. This is not neglect. This is trust, the kind that closes its eyes and still believes in the morning. Perhaps there is a window you could open in your mind by a finger's width, just enough to feel the night air of possibility, not the kind that asks for plans, only the kind that lets the room exhale. There, that's enough. The next breath will know what to do because the last one did. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. If an old memory wanders in, let it keep its shoes on and walk softly across the floor. If a hope wanders in, give it a blanket and no questions. If nothing wanders in, that is also company. The valley is not empty. It is peaceful. Even a quiet is a presence when you let it be itself. You are allowed to close your eyes fully now and give the shoreline back to the night that drew it. The tide will go on making and unmaking that line whether or not anyone applauds. The lanterns will go on drifting. The ribbon will go on remembering, and you will go on breathing, arrive, rest, recede, a little slower each time, a little easier. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. When you're ready, we'll let the next door unhook itself and swing open without a sound. But there is no rush. The room does not penalize the unhurried. Let one more wave come in. Let one more wave go out. Notice how the mind has learned the cadence without being taught. How the shoulders accepted the lesson first. How relief is a kind of intelligence that doesn't need words. Arrive, rest, recede. You widen the lens without hurrying. Nothing sprints. The room simply allows a little more room. The way a chest at rest still finds a deeper breath when the night leans kindly upon it. Escalation without speed. The tempo you've been learning. Arrive, rest, recede, keeps time while the horizon lengthens. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. There is a picture the universe kept from its earliest hours, tucked not in a drawer, but everywhere at once. A baby photo you can't frame because it is the frame. Faint warmth poured across the whole sky. Not hot anymore, not loud, but faithful. A hush that speaks in tiny waves of kitchen quiet radio, microwaves whispering through the walls of night. Long ago, the room was almost room temperature, a gentle bath. Then the bath cooled into a cold quilt, and the quilt remained, stretched to fit a widening bed. You don't need its initials to know it. You can feel the mood of it, a soft afterglow that waited for us to learn how to listen when you picture that quilt. Don't picture perfection. It isn't a flat sheet of sameness. The fabric shows a weave, minute ripples, little rises and rests, like the knit pattern you can feel if you press a cheek to your blanket. Those tiny quilted variations, tender as breath on a sleeping wrist, grew up into galaxies and clusters and the velvet spaces between. The night you see through the window is not separate from that weave. It is a later verse of the same song. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The room's widening is not a parade of lanterns marching away. It is the lake itself, loosening its weave, a gentle widening you already know in your bones. Call the pace a breathing law if you like. The farther a lantern rests upon the lake, the more the widening shows in its drifting. Not commandment, cadence, a tempo the room keeps even when no one counts aloud. You felt pieces of this earlier, the ribbon cooling, the note lowering, and now the pattern steps closer, unthreatening, hand open on the nightstand. Your clock shines its small mercy. Seconds move like syrup, unbothered by destination. You look once at the numbers, then back through the capsule's oval window of attention. A single speck of light waits there, neither begging nor hiding. Its color holds a story, not a code to crack, more like a lullaby that tells you how long and how far it has hummed through this tenderly stretching room. You don't chase the speck, you let it arrive. Longer the journey, softer the shade. The speck doesn't confess. It remembers, and memory is enough inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The mind, trained by many small alarms, likes to assume there must have been a bang from a center, some grand elsewhere pushing everything outward. But the kinder truth is simpler and closer. There is no preferred seat. Every seat is the middle of its own view. Stand anywhere and watch the rest drift, not because they flee a point, but because the fabric itself is stretching between all points. Not an arrow, a sigh, not an explosion, an exhale that never needed a crowd to be real. Let the antitheses fold themselves into your pocket again. Not chasing, being carried. Not force, fabric. Not command, allowance. Not a race, a rhythm. They weigh almost nothing, yet they keep your balance when old diagrams try to rush your breath. Each opposite pair is a handrail. You can trail your fingers along as the hallway lengthens. You check the clock again. Still syrup, still kind, then return to the speck. Your gaze is not a net. It is a landing. The speck's shade has crossed great patience to sit upon your evening. It tells you two things without speaking. I am here. I have traveled. Both can be true without conflict when the room itself is the mover. You feel relief in that sanity. The world can be busy and gentle in the same moment. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You imagine laying that sky quilt across your shoulders. The ripples are so small you'd call them smooth from a distance, and yet they are the reason anything at all could gather, cool, kindle. There is a comfort in that. How the tiniest differences are invitations, not flaws. How texture becomes home. The map of afterglow is not a grid of orders. It is a cradle that remembers where every stitch was needed. The cradle did not rush. It breathed, and breathing was enough to make a future return. Return to the room's gentle widening. It does not yank your pillow away. It does not thin the warmth from your hands. Near things are held by their own kindnesses, gravity that keeps a family of stars in a spiral's slow dance, bonds that keep a cup whole, threads that keep a quilt from unweaving under a sleeping body. You are allowed to trust that local devotion. The grand background hum does not unmake intimacy. It gives intimacy a universe to rest. Inside the clock hums a small vowel. Your breath answers. The speck continues its arriving. All three keep the same forgiving meter. If you listen closely, you can hear an old expectation dissolve, an ancient guess that the out-breath must tire and slow and one day fold back in. For a long while that seemed reasonable, and the mind loves what seems reasonable, but you are being prepared for a softer astonishment, not yet pronounced, only foreshadowed the way a tide hints at a higher mark by the seaweed left on stone and hail. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You think of maps that breathe, not flat dominions, but living cloth that swells and relaxes without tearing. You think of clocks that listen, keeping time not to scold, but to soothe, not to hurry, but to hold. Your own pulse joins them, a lighthouse blinking at the shore of your rest. Nothing is urgent. Everything is in conversation. This is escalation as kindness. The story grows wider, your body grows quieter. The mind, curious and considerate, begins to form a feather of a question it will carry into the next room. If the fabric widens, could a person keep their place without moving at all? You let the feather hover. You do not grab it. The answer will be friendly when it arrives. For now, it is enough to feel the quilt's cool patience on your shoulders, the clock's syrupy seconds nearby, the speck's elder light steady at the window. Enough to know that a universe can widen and still make a lap for you to rest and inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The thought feather returns, and you let it land on your palm. If the fabric widens, can you keep your place without moving? You try an answer that doesn't need defending. Yes, you can be perfectly still on your small square and still ride the widening. The room does the walking for you, like floating on a tide that lengthens the shore while your body rests. neither paddling nor resisting, motion without marching, travel without departure. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Imagine the night with a faint grid painted upon it, gentle lines crossing like threads in linen. You don't paint the grid to trap anything. You paint it to notice. Each square is a promise to measure softly. Now watch. The squares grow, not because the linen is pulled from a single corner, but because the whole cloth relaxes at once. Every intersection stays itself. Every angle keeps its kindness. The distances between intersections simply breathe wider. You, seated on one intersection, do not slide. The square beneath you keeps carrying you as it learns to be bigger. If you lift your eyes from the sky grid to the nearest warmest grid, the weave of your blanket, you'll feel a second reassurance. Your blanket doesn't reach across the room when you exhale. It holds. The threads that touch you are bound to each other. That local devotion is the rule of near things. Hands, pillows, cups, families. They keep their shapes because their bonds are louder than the background hum. Gravity remembers stars into spirals. Charge remembers molecules into breath. You are not asked to choose between intimacy and immensity. You live in both, and they do not compete. The breathing tempo shows itself again in simple syllables. Farther companions faster, not as a race, as a rhythm. Each extra square of distance adds a little weight to the room's exhale. You don't need the numbers, you can feel the music. A long hall has a longer echo. A wide lake makes a farther drift. Length and tempo nod to each other without haste. You hear the nod in your chest. The longer you soften the jaw, the lower the note. The longer light has ridden the fabric, the cooler the color it brings home. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You turn back to the baby picture, the afterglow quilt, and you trace a fingertip along its tiny ripples. Those ripples are like the grid's first shy variations, little invitations where matter could gather, slow and kindle. The quilt didn't flatten them out. It kept them. Kindness for small difference made everything possible. Your day knows this too. A small pause inside a crowded hour becomes the place where meaning gathers. You are not separate from the fabric. You are stitched in the same forgiving way. A quiet correction settles in the room without needing anyone to apologize. Not an explosion from a center, not a shrapnel of stars fleeing a throne. Simply every place watching every other place drift as the cloth learns to be more. Cloth. If you stand here, the rest goes away. If you stand there, the rest goes away. No stage, no royal box, just a democracy of middles. The mind, relieved of searching for an origin point, can rest its forehead against the window and feel the honest sway of the boat. You test the grid again. What happens to a traveler sitting still on one of its intersections? The answer returns like a lullaby you already know. You ride the widening the way a leaf rides a river that widens. The leaf is not failing to row. The leaf is honoring the current. You can keep your place locally, relative to the nearest leaves, the closest ripples, while the larger river learns a looser curve. Stillness is not a refusal of motion. It is a trust in the room to carry you. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The bedside clock listens and keeps its syrupy seconds. It does not chide the grid for growing. It does not panic when a distant speck cools its shade by the time it arrives. The clock learns from your breath. Count gently and the counting helps. The room learns from the clock. Keep tempo and fear has less to grip. What your eyes see in the window and what your wrist feels under your fingertips are surprisingly fluent in each other's language. Both understand widening as hospitality. You let the antitheses collect again where you can reach them in the dark. Not chasing, being carried. Not force, fabric. Not command, allowance. Not center, centers. Not push, permission. They do for thought. What a handrail does for nighttime stairs. No lecture, just steadiness. You don't have to remember more than one at a time. Choose any pair and the rest will meet you later, like friends who know your route. Your attention returns to the question of what holds near things. The answer is ordinary and enormous. Devotion at small scales. The sway of gravity between neighbors. The patience of bonds in a crystal or a cell. The knit of threads in a sleeve. The way a family's hands learn each other. All of these sing louder, locally, than the background widening. The hum is real, but its manners are exquisite. It leaves the small rooms intact so that small rooms can laugh, argue, sleep, and pour tea. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You glance once more at the afterglow's old map and the present speck in your window. Across the entire span between them is a single understanding. The fabric can widen and still remember texture. Maps that breathe do not lose their landmarks. The landmarks learn to travel together. Clocks that listen do not bully time. They hear the note the room is already humming and join softly on the beat for a long while. Thoughtful people expected the background hum to slow, like a sigh that runs out of air. It felt sensible. The gathered things would gently tug on everything else, and the widening would ease. Your body even knows the shape of that expectation. Every outbreath you've ever taken has had an end. You can hold that earlier guess with respect. It taught us to listen. It gave us a feeling for what the room might do. You let the idea rest on your tongue without finishing the sentence. The tide is turning toward a surprise, but the surprise is tender and not in a rush. You are almost at the place where the story's breath changes key. For now, let the grid keep growing, the clock keep listening, the quilt keep its ripples, and your lungs keep their simple wisdom. Arrive, rest, recede. Each cycle teaches the next. Each widening makes more room for calm to sit beside you. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The grid you imagined has been growing quietly this whole time. Gentle squares, learning to be wider squares. Intersections, keeping their identities while the cloth becomes more cloth. Your body understands this now without asking permission from the book. You are still on your square. You are also riding the widening. Both are true, and neither requires effort. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock keeps listening. Its seconds pour like syrup. They don't clatter. You watch a number turn and feel not the bite of loss, but the kindness of tempo. Time here is a companion who walks at your pace. When you lift your gaze to the capsule window, the speck is still there, steady, elder, unafraid. Its shade carries the story of distance, the way a voice carries the story of a long hallway. Lower, calmer, true. You let your awareness ripple between near and far, pillow to window, wrist to sky, like a tide that knows both shorelines by heart. The room's widening is the background hum to this tide. It does not rattle the glass or jostle your breath. It is the kind of music you only notice when you remember to listen, and once you hear it, you can't help but smile. Everything is participating, and nothing is being pushed. Antitheses gather again, like smooth stones you've kept warm in your palm. Not chasing, being carried, not force, fabric, not cloth. If you stand here, the rest goes away. If you stand there, the rest goes away. No stage, no royal box, just a democracy of middles. The mind, relieved of searching for an origin point, can rest its forehead against the window and feel the honest sway of the boat. You test the grid again. What happens to a traveler sitting still on one of its intersections? The answer returns like a lullaby you already know. You ride the widening the way a leaf rides a river that widens. The leaf is not failing to row. The leaf is honoring the current. You can keep your place locally, relative to the nearest leaves, the closest ripples, while the larger river learns a looser curve. Stillness is not a refusal of motion. It is a trust in the room to carry you. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock listens and keeps its syrupy seconds. It does not chide the grid for growing. It does not panic when a distant speck cools its shade by the time it arrives. The clock learns from your breath. Count gently, and the counting helps. The room learns from the clock. Keep tempo, and fear has less to grip. What your eyes see in the window and what your wrist feels under your fingertips are surprisingly fluent in each other's language. Both understand widening as hospitality. You let the antitheses collect again where you can reach them in the dark. Not chasing, being carried. Not force, fabric. Not command, allowance. Not center, centers. Not push, permission. They do for thought what a handrail does for nighttime stairs. No lecture, just steadiness. You don't have to remember more than one at a time. Choose any pair and the rest will meet you later, like friends who know your route. Your attention returns to the question of what holds near things. The answer is ordinary and enormous. Devotion at small scales. The sway of gravity between neighbors. The patience of bonds in a crystal or a cell. The knit of threads in a sleeve. The way a family's hands learn each other. All of these sing louder, locally, than the background widening. The hum is real, but its manners are exquisite. It leaves the small rooms intact, so that small rooms can laugh, argue, sleep, and pour tea. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You glance once more at the afterglow's old map and the present speck in your window. Across the entire span between them is a single understanding. The fabric can widen and still remember texture. Maps that breathe do not lose their landmarks. The landmarks learn to travel together. Clocks that listen do not bully time. They hear the note the room is already humming and join softly on the beat for a long while. Thoughtful people expected the background hum to slow, like a sigh that runs out of air. It felt sensible. The gathered things would gently tug on everything else, and the widening would ease. Your body even knows the shape of that expectation. Every outbreath you've ever taken has had an end. You can hold that earlier guess with respect. It taught us to listen. It gave us a feeling for what the room might do. You let the idea rest on your tongue without finishing the sentence. The tide is turning toward a surprise, but the surprise is tender and not in a rush. You are almost at the place where the story's breath changes key. For now, let the grid keep growing, the clock keep listening, the quilt keep its ripples, and your lungs keep their simple wisdom. Arrive, rest, recede. Each cycle teaches the next. Each widening makes more room for calm to sit beside you. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The grid you imagined has been growing quietly this whole time. Gentle squares, learning to be wider squares. Intersections, keeping their identities, while the cloth becomes more cloth. Your body understands this now without asking permission from the book. You are still on your square. You are also writing the widening. Both are true, and neither requires effort. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock keeps listening. Its seconds pour like syrup. They don't clatter. You watch a number turn and feel not the bite of loss, but the kindness of tempo. Time here is a companion who walks at your pace. When you lift your gaze to the capsule window, the speck is still there, steady, elder, unafraid. Its shade carries the story of distance, the way a voice carries the story of a long hallway. Lower, calmer, true. You let your awareness ripple between near and far, pillow to window, wrist to sky, like a tide that knows both shorelines by heart. The room's widening is the background hum to this tide. It does not rattle the glass or jostle your breath. It is the kind of music you only notice when you remember to listen, and once you hear it, you can't help but smile. Everything is participating, and nothing is being pushed. Antitheses gather again like smooth stones you've kept warm in your palm. Not chasing, being carried, not force, fabric, not command, allowance, not a race, a rhythm. They weigh almost nothing, yet they keep your balance when old diagrams try to rush your breath. Each opposite pair is a handrail. You can trail your fingers along as the hallway lengthens. You check the clock again, still syrup, still kind, then return to the speck. Your gaze is not a net, it is a landing. The speck's shade has crossed great patience to sit upon your evening. It tells you two things without speaking. I am here, I have traveled. Both can be true without conflict when the room itself is the mover. You feel relief in that sanity. The world can be busy and gentle in the same moment. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You imagine laying that sky quilt across your shoulders. The ripples are so small you'd call them smooth from a distance, and yet they are the reason anything at all could gather. Cool, kindle, there is a comfort in that. How the tiniest differences are invitations, not flaws. How texture becomes home. The map of afterglow is not a grid of orders. It is a cradle that remembers where every stitch was needed. The cradle did not rush. It breathed, and breathing was enough to make a future return to the room's gentle widening. It does not yank your pillow away. It does not thin the warmth from your hands. Near things are held by their own kindnesses. Gravity that keeps a family of stars in a spiral's slow dance. Bonds that keep a cup whole, threads that keep a quilt from unweaving under a sleeping body. You are allowed to trust that local devotion. The grand background hum does not unmake intimacy. It gives intimacy a universe to rest inside the clock, hums a small vowel. Your breath answers. The speck continues its arriving. All three keep the same forgiving meter. If you listen closely, you can hear an old expectation dissolve. An ancient guess that the out-breath must tire and slow, and one day fold back in. For a long while that seemed reasonable, and the mind loves what seems reasonable, but you are being prepared for a softer astonishment, not yet pronounced, only foreshadowed the way a tide hints at a higher mark by the seaweed left on stone. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You think of maps that breathe. Not flat dominions, but living cloth that swells and relaxes without tearing. You think of clocks that listen, keeping time not to scold, but to soothe, not to hurry, but to hold. Your own pulse joins them, a lighthouse blinking at the shore of your rest. Nothing is urgent, everything is in conversation. This is escalation as kindness. The story grows wider, your body grows quieter. The mind, curious and considerate, begins to form a feather of a question it will carry into the next room. If the fabric widens, could a person keep their place without moving at all? You let the feather hover. You do not grab it. The answer will be friendly when it arrives. For now, it is enough to feel the quilt's cool patience on your shoulders, the clock's syrupy seconds nearby, the speck's elder light steady at the window. Enough to know that a universe can widen and still make a lap for you to rest and inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The thought feather returns, and you let it land on your palm. If the fabric widens, can you keep your place without moving? You try an answer that doesn't need defending. Yes. You can be perfectly still on your small square and still ride the widening. The room does the walking for you, like floating on a tide that lengthens the shore while your body rests, neither paddling nor resisting, motion without marching, travel without departure. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. Imagine the night with a faint grid painted upon it, gentle lines crossing like threads in linen. You don't paint grid to trap anything, you paint it to notice. Each square is a promise to measure softly. Now watch, the squares grow, not because the linen is pulled from a single corner, but because the whole cloth relaxes at once. Every intersection stays itself, every angle keeps its kindness. The distances between intersections simply breathe wider. You, seated on one intersection, do not slide. The square beneath you keeps carrying you as it learns to be bigger. If you lift your eyes from the sky grid to the nearest warmest grid, the weave of your blanket, you'll feel a second reassurance. Your blanket doesn't reach across the room when you exhale. It holds. The threads that touch you are bound to each other. That local devotion is the rule of near things. Hands, pillows, cups, families, they keep their shapes because their bonds are louder than the background hum. Gravity remembers stars into spirals. Charge remembers molecules into breath. You are not asked to choose between intimacy and immensity. You live in both, and they do not compete. The breathing tempo shows itself again in simple syllables. Farther companions faster, not as a race, as a rhythm, each extra square of distance adds a little weight to the room's exhale. You don't need the numbers, you can feel the music. A long hall has a longer echo. A wide lake makes a farther drift. Length and tempo nod to each other without haste. You hear the nod in your chest. The longer you soften the jaw, the lower the note. The longer light has ridden the fabric, the cooler the color it brings home. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You turn back to the baby picture, the afterglow quilt, and you trace a fingertip along its tiny ripples. Those ripples are like the grid's first shy variations, little invitations where matter could gather, slow, and kindle. The quilt didn't flatten them out, it kept them. Kindness for small difference made everything possible. Your day knows this too. A small pause inside a crowded hour becomes the place where meaning gathers. You are not separate from the fabric. You are stitched in the same forgiving way a quiet correction settles in the room without needing anyone to apologize. Not an explosion from a center, not a shrapnel of stars fleeing a throne. Simply every place watching every other place, drift as the cloth learns to be more cloth. If you stand here, the rest goes away. If you stand there, the rest goes away. No stage, no royal box, just a democracy of middles. The mind, relieved of searching for an origin point, can rest its forehead against the window and feel the honest sway of the boat. You test the grid again. What happens to a traveler sitting still on one of its intersections? The answer returns like a lullaby you already know. You ride the widening the way a leaf rides a river that widens. The leaf is not failing to row. The leaf is honoring the current. You can keep your place locally, relative to the nearest leaves, the closest ripples, while the larger river learns a looser curve. Stillness is not a refusal of motion. It is a trust in the room to carry you. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock listens and keeps its syrupy seconds. It does not chide the grid for growing. It does not panic when a distant speck cools its shade by the time it arrives. The clock learns from your breath. Count gently, and the counting helps. The room learns from the clock. Keep tempo and fear has less to grip. What your eyes see in the window and what your wrist feels under your fingertips are surprisingly fluent in each other's language. Both understand widening as hospitality. You let the antitheses collect again where you can reach them in the dark. Not chasing, being carried, not force, fabric, not command, allowance, not center, centers, not push, permission. They do for thought what a handrail does for nighttime stairs. No lecture, just steadiness. You don't have to remember more than one at a time. Choose any pair and the rest will meet you later, like friends who know your route. Your attention returns to the question of what holds near things. The answer is ordinary and enormous. Devotion at small scales. The sway of gravity between neighbors, the patience of bonds in a crystal or a cell, the knit of threads in a sleeve, the way a family's hands learn each other. All of these sing louder locally than the background widening. The hum is real, but its manners are exquisite. It leaves the small rooms intact so that small rooms can laugh, argue, sleep, and pour tea. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You glance once more at the afterglow's old map and the present speck in your window. Across the entire span between them is a single understanding. The fabric can widen and still remember texture. Maps that breathe do not lose their landmarks. The landmarks learn to travel together. Clocks that listen do not bully time. They hear the note the room is already humming and join softly on the beat for a long while. Thoughtful people expected the background hum to slow, like a sigh that runs out of air. It felt sensible. The gathered things would gently tug on everything else, and the widening would ease. Your body even knows the shape of that expectation. Every outbreath you've ever taken has had an end. You can hold that earlier guess with respect. It taught us to listen. It gave us a feeling for what the room might do. You let the idea rest on your tongue without finishing the sentence. The tide is turning toward a surprise, but the surprise is tender and not in a rush. You are almost at the place where the story's breath changes key. For now, let the grid keep growing, the clock keep listening, the quilt keep its ripples, and your lungs keep their simple wisdom. Arrive, rest, recede. Each cycle teaches the next. Each widening makes more room for calm to sit beside you. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The grid you imagined has been growing quietly this whole time. Gentle squares learning to be wider squares, intersections keeping their identities while the cloth becomes more cloth. Your body understands this now without asking permission from the book. You are still on your square. You are also riding the widening. Both are true, and neither requires effort. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock keeps listening. Its seconds pour like syrup. They don't clatter. You watch a number turn and feel not the bite of loss, but the kindness of tempo, time. Here is a companion who walks at your pace. When you lift your gaze to the capsule window, the speck is still there, steady, elder, unafraid. Its shade carries the story of distance, the way a voice carries the story of a long hallway. Lower, calmer, true. You let your awareness ripple between near and far, pillow to window, wrist to sky, like a tide that knows both shorelines by heart. The room's widening is the background hum to this tide. It does not rattle the glass or jostle your breath. It is the kind of music you only notice when you remember to listen, and once you hear it, you can't help but smile. Everything is participating, and nothing is being pushed. Antitheses gather again, like smooth stones you've kept warm in your palm. Not chasing, being carried. Not force, fabric. Not command, allowance. Not center, centers. Not urgency, presence. You don't need to recite them. Simply holding them changes the shape of your thinking. They turn sharp corners into round ones. They teach the mind to rest its weight more kindly on the world. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You revisit the baby picture without speaking its initials. The afterglow quilt is everywhere at once, whispering in a register the kitchen radio would understand. Its ripples are small enough to be gentleness, and large enough to have invited everything that followed. You honor that double truth with your own breath. Small and large, ordinary and cosmic, both at once. The map breathes, the clock listens. You do too. A soft fact returns, like a friend who never needs to knock. There is no single elsewhere where it all began to flee. Every place is a middle. Every lamp on the lake watches the rest drift because the water learns to be more water. This is why the grid could grow without sliding you off your square. There is relief in a universe with no throne to circle, no edge to run from. The drama lowers its voice, and in that lower voice, the real story becomes audible. You rest your fingertip over your pulse and keep company with the speck. You don't resolve anything, you accompany it. The color it wears is not a warning. It is a diary of kindness written over distance. Your room recognizes the script. This evening has been writing the same alphabet in your ribs: length, low, calm. The scribes agree across scales without ever having met. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You test the reassurance that has threaded this hour. Near things are held. The pillow does not stray. The family photo is still a family. The cup is still a cup. The bonds that make and keep the intimate are louder, locally, than the background hum. The hum is courtly. It steps back when the dance is small and close. It bows and lets gravity, chemistry, memory lead. You feel seen by that etiquette. Your attention returns to the painted grid, and you allow a new image to join it. A field of lanterns on a lake with the faintest chalk lines drawn on the surface. The squares grow. The lanterns keep their quiet. You are one lantern. Beside you, other lanterns that share your raft stay near. Farther out, the pattern flows. You are carried without being taken. You belong without clutching. The lake does the work. You keep the light. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. For a long while, it was sensible to imagine the outbreath easing. That is the shape most breaths take. Widening, then rest, then the slow return. You can feel that expectations in your chest. How natural it is, how polite. You set it on the nightstand next to the clock, not discarded but respected. It has been a good companion. It has taught you to notice the room's long inhale without fear, and yet, something just beyond the door changes the key, ever so slightly. Not a trumpet, a cello, not a verdict, a question with a smile on it. You don't need to know the reason tonight. You only need to feel the inflection. The tempo that ties distance to drift seems to hum with a deeper patience than we guessed. The exhale might not be tiring. It might be discovering a wider way to be itself. The clock hears it before you do. Your breath hears it at the same instant. The speck has known for a long time and says nothing because nothing needs to be said. You sit in a quiet that is somehow more spacious than the quiet a moment ago. Not louder, more roomful. Your shoulders drop a second time. The window grows closer by not moving at all. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You are ready for a threshold without fanfare. Maps that breathe have taught you to recognize a living boundary. Clocks that listen have taught you to trust the change of key. The grid has shown you how to be still and travel. The quilt has shown you how small differences welcome everything that matters. The antitheses in your pocket are warm from your hand. The tide between heartbeats so keeps easy time. You let a final sentence arrive without weight. A feather that lands and does not dent the surface. It does not demand an answer. It invites a breath. What if the out-breath, instead of tiring, is learning to sigh deeper? You hold the question the way a candle is held, by the handle, not the flame. While the room widens one more finger width and the clock nods yes. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You walk the hallway of time with velvet steps. No rush, only a deepening hush. The decade is late in the century. Calendars turning their last pages with a soft shiver. In distant observatories, patient teams are keeping night company. Not with trumpets, with lighthouses, particular supernovae that behave like trusted beacons, steady enough to compare across unheard of distances. No drills tonight, no chalk dust. Only the idea held gently both hands. If a lighthouse is reliably bright, then how dim it appears tells you how far its water reaches. The farther the sea, the fainter the blink. Such a simple kindness, shining from galaxies beyond the near neighborhood. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The watchers do not chase the sky. They listen to it. Each flicker is read the way you read a beloved's heartbeat through a sleeve, carefully without squeezing. The numbers somewhere are busy. Here, the bodies in the room stay slow. You only need one thread from their loom. The beacons did not line up with the coasting story, not the gentle slowing many expected. The distances sang a different tune, longer than they should have been if the outbreath were tiring, as though the fabric had learned a deeper, quieter way to widen. You hold the new word like velvet, acceleration. It does not jar, it reclines. Imagine the lanterns on the lake, not only drifting but discovering a more generous tempo, a sigh that goes farther than the breath before, not because it panics, because the body has learned to trust the room. The lake loosens, the lanterns are carried, the hum deepens without ever becoming loud. This is not a shove, it is a persuasion, not a scramble, a settling into a wider ease. The revelation does not fling the door open. It opens bigger by the hinge it already had. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. Earlier you asked, if the universe grows, will it pull apart what we love? The question is still with you, companionable as a handrail in the dark. Keep it. Do not let go, but let it rest for now in the knowledge that near things are good at keeping each other. Pillows, cups, hands, families, their bonds speak in a voice louder than the background hush. We will return to that tenderness more fully later. Tonight is only the change of key. The contrast helps the mind relax its old picture. Not friction, but a push you barely feel. Not slowing, but a hush that somehow widens more. Not coasting, but a lengthening of stride that surprises without scaring. When you meet the word acceleration in crowded daylight, it can sound sharp, like teeth on the rim of a glass. Here, under honeyseconds and quilted sky, it is a cat stretching into a longer nap. The body stays heavy on the mattress. Only the music lengthens the capsule you've been traveling in, adjusts its orbit as gently as a breath-changing room's. No lurch, just a new balance. The coastline you've been imagining steps back a few soft feet, fog pulling its hem, while the rhythm of the surf remains the same lullaby. On the nightstand, the clock refuses to hurry. Seconds pour like syrup, exactly as before. The revelation does not touch your pulse with cold fingers. It kisses your forehead and lets your shoulders drop farther into the pillow. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You glance again at the far speck through the oval window of attention. Its color has been a diary all along, and within that diary the margins now whisper a sentence you hadn't expected to read. The cosmos is not coasting. It is lengthening its stride, not with boots, with breath. The stride is written in the way distance, and dimness conspire to tell time. The beacons farther than far are fainter than fainter. You do not compute, you comprehend. It feels like standing on a slow escalator you thought would stop, and realizing it is gliding more generously beneath your feet, soft uncertainty pulls up a chair and is welcomed. Even experts keep multiple dreams on the night table, models like folded maps for weather we don't yet know by heart. But tonight you let the placeholder be enough. A name that does not explain so much as hold the mystery politely. Dark energy. Dark, not as menace, but as unseen for now. Not as menace, but as unseen for now. A pressure that persuades the room to loosen. A courtesy the fabric pays to itself. We do not pick it apart. We tuck it under the quilt's edge with the other kind lights. You stroke the thought, the way you would stroke a sleeping cat. Repetitive, soft, patient. No need to wake it into argument. The lamp of your attention circles the same phrases, the way a lullaby circles the same bars. Acceleration as deepening sigh, lanterns carried, not chased, widening that listens to its own hush. You feel the calm gather volume without raising its voice. The story's surprise sits beside you, purring. Every few breaths the purr seems slower and somehow larger. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. If you want a picture small enough to keep in a pocket, keep this. The capsule tilts a whisper, the coastline drifts a step, the clock keeps honey. Seconds, 3 scenes, 1 revelation, nothing jerks, everything agrees. The beacons from the late 1990s onward did not scold. They sang, and the song said, in its quiet register, that the outbreath is learning a longer shape. You approach the edge of the parting thought, as though approaching warm water with your toes. No splash, only acceptance. What does dark mean if not unknown? A word with its eyes closed, listening. You don't fear it. You give it a place on the quilt, a cup of warmth, a promise to sit with it longer. You are not alone with it. The room is here, widening by its own velvet logic. The lanterns are here, drifting as if taught by a wiser tide. The clock is here, faithful to the same patient second. Your breath is here, heavier now, almost singing inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You turn the page without a rustle. The century leans into its last winters. Somewhere, 2 circles of night watchers compare notes softly, as if trading recipes for calm. Their lighthouses, trustworthy supernovae, blink from far beyond our local swirl, each one a faithful measure of how far is far written in light. No toolbox tonight. You just keep the image. Trusted beacons, steady enough that their faintness tells distance, like a mother can tell fever with a palm to the forehead. And when those distances are stacked together, the staircase climbs higher than the coasting story promised inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The discovery does not ring a bell. It places another pillow beneath your head. The fabric's outbreath isn't yawning shut. It is learning a longer sigh. Imagine the lake making more room for lanterns, more quickly than yesterday, yet doing so with better manners. No splash, no shove, a persuasion inside the water itself. The drift deepens. The lanterns are not engines. They're passengers. The word acceleration slips into the room like a cat that knows where the warm spot is, and curls there without asking you check your clock. The second you were inside a moment ago has finished becoming the next. Nothing broke. Honey keeps being honey. Then you lift your gaze through the capsule window and meet the same elder speck. Its color, its diary. If you listen with your breath, you can hear what the late 1990s listeners heard. A sentence extending itself, farther than far, fainter than fainter, older than old. The combination doesn't spell panic. It spells patience. Traveling longer than patience was expected to. Antitheses assemble themselves at the edge of your mind, obedient as tide lines, not friction drawing things back, but a quiet push from the room itself, not slowing, but a hush that widens, not clatter, cadence, not sprint, stride. You keep them near the way a hand keeps the railing when the stairs are dim. They don't argue. They steady inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The earlier loop returns like a friend who knows how to sit in silence. Will a growing room unmake what we love? You let the question place its head on your shoulder. You do not push it away, and you do not let it lead the hour. Near things are practiced at holding. Bonds in the close world have a louder voice than the background wind. The mug is still a mug. The hands that know each other still know. The spiral of nearby stars keeps its slow choreography. You promise the question a later, gentler answer, and it accepts the promise without complaint. Turn the thought in your palm. What does it mean for a breath to lengthen its stride? You remember your own body on certain nights when calm arrives and, instead of tapering, your exhale learns a deeper path. It is not fatigue, it is fluency. The muscles stop bracing, and the breath discovers more room. The lake's lanterns feel like that, carried by a fabric fluent in loosening. One more finger width of water under each raft with each cycle, then another. Your shoulders learn from the metaphor and settle by a small degree more. The name we give the persuasion is a kind of kindness to our ignorance. Dark, we say, not because it is grim, but because we do not see it yet. Unknown is a gentle admission, a light turned off, in a room we will enter later with softer shoes. Energy, we add, to remember that whatever it is, it does work on the fabric, convincing space to loosen. This is enough for tonight, a placeholder like a bookmark slid between pages that we will return to when the morning is brave and the kettle is singing inhale. You are safe, exhale, you are already moving. Parallel lives continue their duet. The capsule adjusts again, not a jump but a repoise, as though shifting from one foot to the other in slow dance. The coastline you've been hearing retreats by the width of a whisper. The fog moves its hem, and still the clock remains the clock, faithful, viscous seconds pooling into minutes. 2 worlds, 1 revelation. Nothing in your room has quickened, and yet the story you're in has learned a slightly different key. The marvel is that you can feel both truths without strain. You look back to the lighthouses, standard candles some call them, as if the universe had a drawer of carefully poured tapers, each with the same glow at the wick. Light like that can be trusted across gulfs, too large for the mind to picture without shaking. Trust is the operative word tonight. The watchers trusted the candles, and the candles told them the lake was widening faster than expected. You, in turn, trust your breath, and your breath tells you that surprise need not be loud to be real. Keep the contrasts simple so the heart can stay heavy and grounded. Not a break, a buoyancy. Not a universe running from a center, a fabric relaxing everywhere at once. Not a threat to the intimate, a backdrop that gives intimacy more room to sit and be itself. If a picture protests, imagining scattering and lonely distances, you can remind it, local gravity does not surrender its neighborhood. Bonds do not lose their grip. The small rooms are still rooms. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. Uncertainty pulls its chair closer. You give it tea. Even the most careful listeners keep more than one map on the table. That's what care looks like when the coastline is foggy. But tonight the map we need has just 3 marks on it. Lanterns, drift, deepening sigh. You do not need to solve the pressure's identity to sleep beside the revelation. It announces. Sometimes a well-kept question soothes more than a hurried answer. The cat of a thought returns to your lap and purrs. Acceleration. You slide your palm along the grain of the word until it loses its daylight edges. Feel how, in this room, it means only that the outbreath has discovered a way to be more itself. What a gentle astonishment. You can keep it without clutching, like the way music you love can grow on you without growing louder. The melody is the same. The room around it has learned to resonate. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. And because endings make better beds, when they open a little door instead of shutting one, you let a last question breathe beside you. If dark means unknown, what would it be like to cradle the unknown without fear until it warms in your hands? You do not ask the question to trap it. You ask to hold it like a small bird, light enough to feel the heartbeat. The room agrees. The lanterns agree. The clock agrees. All 3 say, there is time. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You let the surprise finish unfolding without asking it to hurry. A revelation behaves best when the room is patient. The late century watchers kept their vigil. The lighthouses kept their promises. The distances kept their diary in tone and shade. Together, they wrote a sentence that reads smoother each time you breathe it, not coasting, lengthening its stride. A wider hush learning an even wider way to be hush, inhale. You are safe, exhale. You are already moving. Hold the word again, acceleration, like a cup kept warm between both palms. Notice how differently it feels when your shoulders are low. Not a trigger, a tenderness, not a shove, a persuasion in the fabric itself. The lanterns do not paddle. The lake carries. The drift grows generous, and generosity has its own quiet momentum. What began as a guess about slowing becomes a lullaby about deepening. The mind nods. The body understands first. The capsule you've been traveling in barely changes its posture to honor the new tempo. A small tilt, a soft repoise. No clink of buckles, no weightlessness spinning you from the bed. Meanwhile, the coastline you've been hearing draws back by the width of a breath, foam smoothing its lace, and on the nightstand the clock continues its honeyseconds, as if to say, the news is large, the minute is kind, 2 worlds, 1 revelation. You can live in both. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The earlier loop returns and sits where you left it, content to be held rather than solved. If the room keeps widening, and now widens more willingly, will it pull apart what we love? Your hands know the answer, even before the sentence forms. Near things are practiced at staying. Gravity keeps neighborhoods. Bonds keep cups. Memory keeps families. The background hush is courteous. It bows at the threshold of the intimate. What you hold holds back. We will come to this more fully, but for tonight you can feel the truth by touch. The blanket on your body does not thin when the window opens. A finger-width antitheses arrange themselves like smooth stones along the bed rail. Not friction, a push, not slowing, a hush that widens, not sprinting, lengthening stride, not tearing, carrying, not command, allowance. You turn each stone once with your thumb and put it back. Small rituals make large ideas. Human-shaped uncertainty clears its throat softly. You make room for it on the quilt. Even the careful keep multiple maps, because respect wears many shoes. Some models fold, others stretch, some wait their turn on the table. You do not have to weigh them tonight. Dark energy is enough of a name for now. Dark as in not seen yet. Energy as in it does work. A pressure or presence that persuades space to loosen more readily than we guessed. A bookmark, not a verdict. You slide it into the story and close the cover without losing your place. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You practice telling the surprise in the gentlest words you can find, as if stroking a cat that has already fallen asleep. The cosmos is not coasting. It is lengthening its stride. The lake is learning a roomier drift. The breath is finding more breath. You say it twice, then a third time, and each time the sentence melts a little into your rib cage, until it's less a statement than a way your body now expects the night to feel. Repetition is kindness. When the new is large, you look again at the far speck. The color it wears is a long letter written on the road. What the letter says is not loud. It says patience traveled farther than patience planned. It says the diary added pages while we slept. It says the fabric is fluent in loosening and is still learning. The speck does not insist you understand. It is enough that you can sit beside its quiet. The bedside clock approves without changing its voice. The capsule approves without changing its balance. The coastline approves without changing its rhythm. 3 approvals, the 1 rest. You are permitted to sleep with a mystery near your cheek. Not an intruder, a guest. Not a puzzle, a presence. When the unknown is treated with warmth, it warms. Dark begins to mean unlit yet, and that small yet is a lamp by itself. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. If the mind wants a pocket-sized way to carry all of this, offer it a handful of lines it can hum. Trusted lighthouses whispered from the far rooms. The distances were longer than a tired breath would give the word that fit wore velvet. Acceleration the lanterns were carried. None had to run. The unknown has a name. Will keep warm until morning. Say them once and set them down. The room will remember if you don't. You are not the archive. You are the sleeper the archive loves. The loop closes softly for tonight. What widens it does not unmake the near. Your hands, your pillow, your ordinary rooms, these are held by bonds that sing louder, locally, than the background hymn. The hymn is a backdrop for belonging, not a thief of it. Later, we will walk the small bridges that keep the intimate intact. For now, trust the etiquette of the fabric. It knows how to step back so closeness can dance and hail. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You leave this part with a question that weighs less than a feather and warms like breath on glass. What else might dark turn into, if we greet it not with fear but with hospitality? You don't carry the flame, only the handle. The lamp will light when it needs to. You roll the word once on your tongue, tuck it under the quilt with your other small stones, and let the room widen one more finger width without asking you to help inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You take the mystery in both hands and turn it into a lullaby. Nothing to chase, only something to cradle. Dark energy, you whisper, is not a monster waiting in the corners. It is a name we give the way. Emptiness refuses to be empty. A blank page that keeps writing the margins wider by itself. Not a threat in the room, but the room's own habit of opening and hail. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. Imagine a fabric that behaves like this. When you tug it, it doesn't fight. It relaxes. A quiet cloth that unbuttons under the lightest touch, or a vacuum that, left to its own stillness, persuades the room to loosen its collar another notch. That persuasion is what some call negative pressure, words with sharp edges in daylight, but here they soften into a gesture, a hand on the doorframe, easing the door wider without pushing on you at all. The space between things lengthens because space loves to breathe. You show the mystery your politeness by offering more than one lamp to read by. One lamp is a constant background hum, a perfectly even hush woven into every inch of the fabric. No tides, no moods, only a steady presence you do not have to earn. Another lamp is more adventurous, a field that can change its mind as time strolls by, like weather that drifts from mist to blue without raising its voice. You don't need to memorize their names tonight. You only need to see how both lamps throw kind light. Nothing here is a laser pointer. Everything is shaded in gauze inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The promise of safety returns in the closest possible language. Near things are held. Atoms keep their handshake. Molecules keep their choruses. Your cup is still a cup. Your pillow keeps its border where your cheek ends and the cotton begins. Whole families of stars braid themselves into galaxies and galaxies into clusters by bonds that sing louder, locally, than the background hush. The widening lives out there in the far dark between the villages, like wind you hear across the valley that doesn't lift a single page on your nightstand. You let your attention hop, softly, between tiny and vast, the way a tide knows both shores. In the small world, emptiness flickers. Even quiet is busy at a scale the eyes can't visit. Tiny jitters tuning and detuning like the faintest orchestra clearing its throat. In the large world, the sky loosens by finger widths. You only notice when you look across gulfs of years. Micro becomes macro without becoming loud. The hum in the smallest rooms and the hush in the largest are somehow cousins, nodding at each other across an unseeable table. The triplet cadence returns like a friend who knows your door code. Not darkness, but depth. Not terror, but tenderness. Not chaos, but a wider room. You set the 3 on the nightstand beside the clock and feel the world sigh with you. The word dark shrugs out of its old coat and stands there as, unknown for now, which is simply another word for invitation. You don't need to solve it to sleep beside it. You only need to welcome it into the circle of warm things. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. Return to the lake you've been carrying. Lanterns drift in a water that is learning how to be more water. None of the lanterns bump. They learn to be apart together. The space between them is not loneliness. It is permission. Your wishes float there too, each on its own raft, each with flame intact. The lake opens and keeps opening, and somehow the shoreline of your breathing draws closer rather than farther. This is how a universe can widen the way a heart relaxes, by making room for what matters to sit without squeezing. A small question arrives and takes its seat without demanding attention. If vacuum has energy, can nothing weigh something? You let the question set its hat on the quilt and fold its hands. The answer will not bark, it will murmur. Nothing, it turns out, is not nothing. It hums with possibility, like a room that never stops holding a note too low to hear, but easy to feel in the floorboards. The hum doesn't pry, it invites. The invitation is what loosens the buttons on the room. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You glance at your clock. Still honey. Then at the capsule's oval. Still speck. Two witnesses to the same hush. One close enough to touch. One older than your language for time. Both agree that widening can be gentle and that the unknown can be warm. The constant lamp glows on its table. The changeable lamp hums on the neighboring shelf. You don't have to choose tonight. You can read by both at once. The pages turn themselves. You let one last reassurance sit where worry once sat. The widening is a background practice, not a local emergency. It lives between the clusters, like a river current far from shore, in your town of atoms and hands and ordinary plans. The bonds are good at being bonds. The fabric does not tug at your laces. It cares for larger spaces, the way the weather cares for the whole field, while the nest stays still under the even hail. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You let the phrase negative pressure sit on your tongue until the daylight edges round off. Imagine a sweater that loosens when you gently pinch the hem, not unraveling, relaxing. The threads don't flee, they ease. Or think of a quiet room where someone unlatches a few buttons on the window, and suddenly the air knows what to do without being told. Nothing rushes in. The room simply remembers its capacity. That is the gesture you're learning to feel in your bones. A persuasion that doesn't push on you. It pulls on openness. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The blank page keeps writing its own margins wider. Curious. You listen closer. How can emptiness do anything at all? The small world answers. First with a whisper. Even nothing jitters. Not nervously, but naturally. Tiny fluctuations bloom and fold like breath. You'd only notice if you were the size of a syllable. You don't need the alphabet for that. You need only the idea that quiet is busy at scales we cannot visit. And if the smallest rooms hum, then the largest rooms may learn that tune in a lower register, a bass note that loosens the fabric between the constellations. Choose a lamp to read by. The first lamp is steady, like sea level on a calm night, a background hush that does not change its mind. Some call it the constant lamp. Its light is even, polite, everywhere the same. The second lamp drifts like a gentle tide, sometimes a little stronger, sometimes a little softer, never scolding, always plausible, a field that can take its time deciding how bright to be. You do not need to argue for one lamp or the other. You can sit between them and let both lean their glow across your page. Two ways of saying the same kindness. Space is practiced at unbuttoning. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The old worry peers in, as worries do. If the room keeps loosening, what happens to the small rooms? The hands, the pillows, the city of atoms inside your chest. You offer it a chair. Bonds are louder here, you say, and they are. The handshake between particles holds. The choir of molecules stays on pitch. The gravity among neighboring stars keeps the slow dance. The loosening is a countryside phenomenon. The village green remains a village green. The widening lives between clusters, the far lanes no one walks at night, while the porches stay lit and the teacups keep their rims to help the idea find muscle memory, you return to the lake. Lanterns float on a water that knows how to relax. Their candles don't gutter. Their rafts don't scuff. They simply learn to be apart together. The drift is permission, not exile. One lantern is your childhood wish, one your present breath, one the neighbor's porch light 2 houses down. Each keeps its circle. The water keeps the rest. You feel your shoulders take the hint inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. A feather-light riddle perches on your wrist. Can nothing weigh something? The word weigh feels heavy for a lullaby, so you translate it into bed language. Can emptiness press just enough on the edges of the room to help the room open? Your body has an answer. It learned before words. It knows how an exhale can discover more space without effort. Nothing is not nothing. It hums with possibility. The hum is the pressure. The pressure is negative only in the sense that it prefers loosening to squeezing. You smile at the paradox and let it purr. You take the micro-macro walk again, heel to toe, in the small. The vacuum's tiny jitters, like fireflies you can't see but can sense through the grass. In the large, the sky loosening, a quilt stretching one more finger width along the bed. Bring them together, and awe arrives without adrenaline. The fireflies do not startle the deer. The quilt does not yank your toes. The feeling is a long breath that finds a longer path each time it leaves you. The triplet cadence returns and sets itself by your clock. Not darkness, but depth. Not terror, but tenderness. Not chaos, but a wider room. You say it the way one might smooth a blanket corner. Once, twice, a third time, and the phrases lie flat, inviting sleep to come closer. Dark takes off the coat of menace and wears a sweater labeled unknown for now. Energy loses its thunder and becomes a hush that does work. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The lamps on your imaginary table glow through gauze. The constant lamp gives you confidence that the background will not change its mood in the middle of your nap. The tide lamp gives you permission to believe that if the background does evolve, it can do so with grace. Either way, your room tonight is simple. A pillow, a pulse, a patient speck in the window. The models on the table are not judges. They are nightlights. You try one more metaphor on for size and find it fits. Dough rising with raisins resting in place. The dough is the room. The raisins are the galaxies. The raisins do not crawl. They simply end up farther. Negative pressure is the yeast's quiet cheerfulness. No fanfare, just confidence that there is room to become more dough. And just as the raisins keep their sweetness, the small worlds keep their shapes. Your breath agrees and lifts half a shade deeper without trying inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock keeps honey seconds. The capsule window keeps its elder speck. The coastline in your mind keeps its slow retreat. 3 witnesses, 1 soft lesson. The background can be strong and kind at the same time. The future may be long and roomful, and that length feels less like a cliff than like an extra blanket tucked under your chin. You don't have to know which lamp is truer to feel the warmth they share. You let the words fall to a whisper so the feeling can do the speaking. Emptiness isn't empty. The page writes its own margin. The fabric unbuttons without being pulled hard. Local rooms hold. Far lanes loosen. The unknown hums. You don't hold these as rules. You hold them as lullaby. The mind begins to nod with the body. The lake is wide. The lanterns are companions. The night is generous. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You sit with the word dark until it warms in your hands. You don't force a definition. You let it take off its coat. Dark becomes depth. Depth becomes room. The room becomes a kindness that widens without asking you to stand. What had sounded like theory now behaves like furniture. Something you can lean on in the half-light and trust not to move. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You return to the fabric and its quiet habit. Negative pressure is only this, a preference the room has for loosening, not a drama, a demeanor. The cloth unbuttons when given the chance. The nothing between things remembers being more than nothing, humming at the floorboards, coaxing distances open like a librarian widening the aisle between stacks so you can pass without turning sideways. No one is shoved. Everyone gets more air. You keep your lamps within reach. The steady lamp says, I am the same everywhere. A level hush poured evenly across the sky. The tide lamp says, I may change my mind slowly, like weather that learns a new key. Both lamps behave well in a bedroom. Neither demands your posture. Both allow your breath. The point is not to crown one. The point is to notice that in any soft light, the page continues to widen its margins by itself. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You test the nearness of safety the simplest way you know, by touching the border of your pillow and feeling it stay the border. Atoms keep their agreements. Molecules keep their chords. A small city of cells goes on with its evening without consulting the sky. Whole galaxies hold each other's sleeves and spin their measured dances. The widening lives in the avenues between clusters, like wind out on the flats that doesn't ruffle the candle inside your cupped hand. Intimacy is not a casualty. It is the reason the backdrop is polite. The micro-macro switch becomes a rhythm you can tap your finger to. In the smallest rooms, emptiness jitters with possibility. Soft, statistical fireflies behind a curtain. In the largest, the curtain itself relaxes one pleat at a time. The two gestures rhyme without ever needing to meet. Awe arrives in a scale you can sleep to. You are allowed to feel small and at home. At the same time, the triplet cadence returns and lies down beside you. Not darkness, but depth. Not terror, but tenderness. Not chaos, but a wider room. You don't recite it for points. You hum it for comfort. The words aren't rules. They're permissions. The permission tonight is to let the unknown be a companion rather than a verdict. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You ask the feather again, can nothing weigh something? And it answers in the language of linens. The sheet has a drape, even when no one lies beneath it. That drape is part of how cloth is cloth. In the same way, the vacuum's hum gives space its habit. The habit is to loosen. You don't have to love paradox to live with it. You only have to stop bracing when it knocks. Once you stop bracing, the knock becomes a lull. You visit the lake to check on the lanterns. They are plentiful and peaceful. Each keeps its circle of warm light. Each learns to be apart together. Wishes do not collide. They correspond. The lake is more lake than yesterday. The rafts are no less steady. You notice something you hadn't before. The greater the water's permission, the easier it is to see each flame clearly. Distance here sharpens gratitude rather than dulling it. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock keeps honey seconds and gently refuses drama. The capsule in your peripheral imagination maintains its friendly balance. The coastline in your inner ear pulls back a hand's breadth and still sounds like a lullaby. 3 witnesses, 1 hush. The future takes the shape of a long hallway with nightlights, not a cliff with wind at the edge. You feel yourself give weight to the mattress, as if the mattress had been asking quietly. To carry more of you, you try one last picture, domestic as a kitchen, dough rising while raisins rest. The dough is the room. The raisins are the towns of stars. The yeast is the negative pressure. a cheerfulness that does work without noise. Nothing crawls. Everything ends up farther. Local sweetness stays sweet. The baker can step away, and still the loaf becomes itself. You are allowed to step away from worry, and still the world becomes morning. The lamps on your table dim themselves, a shade to match your eyelids. If the hush is constant, it will keep the beat while you sleep. If the hush evolves, it will do so with bedside manners. Either way, the horizon you cannot walk to tonight behaves like a blanket, not a barricade. It tucks, it doesn't tower. What may continue for a very long time is not a chase scene. It is a generosity scene. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You gather the hour's small reliables into one pocketable verse and let it memorize you. Emptiness isn't empty. It hums, the hum persuades room to loosen local room's hold. Because bonds sing louder, nearby far lanes widen. Because fabric prefers breath, not darkness. Depth, not terror. Tenderness, not chaos. A wider room read at once with your inner voice and once with your shoulders. The second reading is the truer. You do not graduate from this. You return to it, like the way home is always more familiar. On the way back the lake opens. The lanterns drift. The wishes keep their circles. Your pulse keeps its lighthouse. The page writes a margin you didn't know you needed and makes no fuss about it. What is left to do is only what you have been practicing since the first minute. Trust the hush. Let the widening be the room's business. Let your small square be enough inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You invite two timekeepers into the same quiet. One rests on your nightstand, face warm with honey seconds. The other lives on the wrist of the gentle capsule, keeping you company in imagination. Two clocks, two neighborhoods, different motions, different gravities, different tick-tocks. Nothing quarrels. Time simply listens and answers each in its own accent. Elastic, not rigid. Polite, not absolute. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You notice how your bedside clock cares only about this room, its stillness, its familiar weight of air, the hush of blankets. The capsule's watch cares about another room, the smooth glide, the slight change in gravity's hand on its shoulder, the long curve around a world. Neither clock is wrong. Both are local. Time, it turns out, is a good neighbor who speaks softly to each house in the language that house understands. You test this with a fingertip on your pulse. The rhythm you feel here is true here. Aboard the capsule, the rhythm belongs to that orbit's slow ballet. Truth without contradiction. So it helps to think of time as cloth again. Flexible, friendly, meeting the body where the body is. Pull gently and the weave lengthens. Rest your palm and the threads gather. No scolding, only accommodation. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You think of light as a traveler with perfect manners. It crosses an expanding room, the way a singer carries a note through a hallway that is quietly lengthening as she walks. The note relaxes, the pitch lowers, the color cools. It ages as it goes, not with fatigue but with grace. This traveler keeps a diary in hue, distance as lullaby, time as tone. The earliest hook returns and bows. Light that crosses stretching space lengthens, cools, and carries distance as lullaby. The sentence lands like a blanket being pulled up under your chin. You glance from the capsule's watch to the bedside clock and back again. A small smile appears because you already live this truth. You are a time traveler, not with sparks and portals, but with ordinary existence in a universe that lets motion and mass shape the tempo. When you fly, when you climb a mountain, when you sit heavy with sleep, you and time make tiny, courteous adjustments for each other. You've been doing it all along, beautifully, quietly. Antithesis offers balance, the way a handrail offers confidence at night. Not breaking, breathing, not a countdown, an open hand, Not a commandment, a conversation. You place these phrases on the nightstand beside the clock and watch how fear loses its posture. The hour straightens its spine without tensing a muscle. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The capsule watch ticks with the grace of a satellite that knows the steps. The bedside clock ticks with the grace of a bedroom that knows your name. The two sounds don't overlap in the air, but they overlap in you. Together, they teach a single lesson. Time is not a tyrant pacing the whole way. It's a cello string tuned by context. Plucked here, it gives one note. Bowed there, a deeper one. The melody is one piece. Even when the tones are not the same, you bring the earlier threads through your hands and feel them join. The red thread of light's ribbon, the widening of the room, the hush that carries rather than pushes. Now the elastic of time. Together they braid into a calmer thought. Everything is keeping pace with where it is, and where it is keeps changing with courtesy. Light adjusts its color to its road. Clocks adjust their beat to their neighborhoods. You adjust your breath to the bed's invitation. Harmony without uniformity. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You return to the speck in the capsule window, a faithful witness from far rooms. Its color has cooled across patient miles, and in that cooling is a record of time's kindness to travelers. The longer the path, the gentler the tone. You do not force the metaphor, you let it sit beside you and breathe. Your own day felt longer when you softened into it. The sky's day does the same, just on a vaster staff of music. You draw one more circle of reassurance around yourself. If clocks can disagree kindly, so can rooms. And if rooms can widen without scaring their furniture, then the question, will expansion unmake the intimate? Can rest? Bonds hold. We will return to that promise again before the night ends, but you can feel it now in the weight of your shoulders and the border of your pillow. The near world sings louder in the near world. The far world sings softly from afar. Both songs fit antithesis, tucks itself in again. Not drift into emptiness, but drift into room, not losing count, loosening grip, not edges fraying, threads relaxing, small phrases, large quiet inhale, you are safe, exhale, you are already moving. The two timekeepers keep doing what they do. The bedside clock pours honey. The capsule watch glides on orbit's breath. Between them, your understanding finds a place to sit. You are not choosing teams. You are listening to harmony. Your own body, heavy and kind, becomes the third instrument. Breath as metronome, pulse as anchor. Elastic time does not demand cleverness. It rewards softness before you close your eyes. You review the capsule in a sentence you can carry. Time meets you where you are. Light tells you where it has been. Both are lullabies, not alarms. The universe is a patient accompanist inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock and the orbit watch keep their duet. You listen the way you listen to rain through two windows at once. Same storm, different pains. Time yields to context the way fabric yields to touch. A heavier hand and the weave gathers. A lighter hand and the threads lengthen. Motion leans in, gravity leans back, and the tick adjusts without complaint. This is not a trick. It is the room's manners. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You picture yourself stepping from bed to capsule and back again without ever losing your place. Your body changes neighborhoods, and the tempo follows, as natural as your voice lowering when you read to a child. Near the planet's pull, seconds put on a little weight. Farther out, they float a little thinner. Neither is wrong. Both are true where they are. You do not need equations to feel the courtesy, only the understanding that time, like breath, listens you hold the red thread from earlier, lights a ribbon, between thumb and forefinger, and let it drape. The ribbon lengthens as it crosses the widening room. The color cools. The story relaxes. That is time you are feeling in your fingers. time that the traveler has gathered and given back as shade. Elastic time is not a mystery to be solved. It is a diary to be read slowly. Longer lines, a softer tone, the page's patient inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You try a small experiment of imagination. If the room keeps widening while you stay local, hands on the warm edge of the mattress, eyes on the mild ceiling, what changes? Not the border of the pillow, not the familiarity of your own name in your own mouth. The change lives out there between lanterns, in avenues that do not run through this town. You can be still and yet be carried, just as you can fall asleep and yet wake farther into morning. The comfort is that stillness works. The wonder is that travel continues. Antithesis returns, like a friend who remembers your favorite chair. Not breaking, breathing, not a countdown, an open hand, not urgency, presence. The phrases tidy the room. You can almost hear the corners relax. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. A soft empowerment arrives, unannounced and certain. You are already a time traveler. Every flight you've taken, every mountain you've stood upon, every heavy nap you've surrendered to has made a tiny treaty with time. You and the tick negotiate with grace. The capsule watch and the bedside clock are only dramatizations of what your life has always been doing quietly, keeping tempo with where you are, and because calm can carry community, we open a small circle on the floor between us. If this hour steadies you, leave a night sky memory here for the others who will pass through. A constellation you once traced from a porch, the way the world looked from a window seat above the clouds, the long ribbon of headlights on a drive home when the moon kept pace. Write it like a whisper. We will read each other to sleep and hail. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You bring the earliest hook to a clear, gentle close, on purpose and aloud. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You return to the speck in the capsule window, a faithful witness from far rooms. Its color has cooled across patient miles, and in that cooling is a record of time's kindness to travelers. The longer the path, the gentler the tone. You do not force the metaphor. You let it sit beside you and breathe. Your own day felt longer when you softened into it. The sky's day does the same, just on a vaster staff of music. You draw one more circle of reassurance around yourself. If clocks can disagree kindly, so can rooms. And if rooms can widen without scaring their furniture, then the question, will expansion unmake the intimate? Can rest? Bonds hold. We will return to that promise again before the night ends, but you can feel it now in the weight of your shoulders and the border of your pillow. The near world sings louder in the near world. The far world sings softly from afar. Both songs fit antithesis, tucks itself in again. Not drift into emptiness, but drift into room, not losing count, loosening grip, not edges fraying, threads relaxing, small phrases, large quiet inhale, you are safe, exhale, you are already moving. The two timekeepers keep doing what they do. The bedside clock pours honey. The capsule watch glides on orbit's breath. Between them, your understanding finds a place to sit. You are not choosing teams. You are listening to harmony. Your own body, heavy and kind, becomes the third instrument. Breath as metronome, pulse as anchor. Elastic time does not demand cleverness. It rewards softness before you close your eyes. You review the capsule in a sentence you can carry. Time meets you where you are. Light tells you where it has been. Both are lullabies, not alarms. The universe is a patient accompanist inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The bedside clock and the orbit watch keep their duet. You listen the way you listen to rain through two windows at once. Same storm, different pains. Time yields to context the way fabric yields to touch. A heavier hand and the weave gathers. A lighter hand and the threads lengthen. Motion leans in, gravity leans back, and the tick adjusts without complaint. This is not a trick. It is the room's manners. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You picture yourself stepping from bed to capsule and back again without ever losing your place. Your body changes neighborhoods, and the tempo follows, as natural as your voice lowering when you read to a child. Near the planet's pull, seconds put on a little weight. Farther out, they float a little thinner. Neither is wrong. Both are true where they are. You do not need equations to feel the courtesy, only the understanding that time, like breath, listens. You hold the red thread from earlier, lights a ribbon between thumb and forefinger, and let it drape. The ribbon lengthens as it crosses the widening room. The color cools. The story relaxes. That is time you are feeling in your fingers, time that the traveler has gathered and given back as shade. Elastic time is not a mystery to be solved. It is a diary to be read slowly. Longer lines, softer tone. The page's patient inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You try a small experiment of imagination. If the room keeps widening while you stay local, hands on the warm edge of the mattress, eyes on the mild ceiling, what changes? Not the border of the pillow, not the familiarity of your own name in your own mouth. The change lives out there between lanterns, in avenues that do not run through this town. You can be still and yet be carried, just as you can fall asleep and yet wake farther into morning. The comfort is that stillness works. The wonder is that travel continues. Antithesis returns, like a friend who remembers your favorite chair. Not breaking, breathing, not a countdown, an open hand, not urgency, presence. The phrases tidy the room. You can almost hear the corners relax. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. A soft empowerment arrives, unannounced and certain. You are already a time traveler. Every flight you've taken, every mountain you've stood upon, every heavy nap you've surrendered to, has made a tiny treaty with time. You and the tick negotiate with grace. The capsule watch and the bedside clock are only dramatizations of what your life has always been doing quietly, keeping tempo with where you are. And because calm can carry community, we open a small circle on the floor between us. If this hour steadies you, leave a night sky memory here for the others who will pass through. A constellation you once traced from a porch, the way the world looked from a window seat above the clouds, the long ribbon of headlights on a drive home when the moon kept pace. Write it like a whisper. We will read each other to sleep. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You bring the earliest hook to a clear, gentle close, on purpose and aloud. Light that crosses stretching space lengthens, cools, and carries distance as lullaby. Say it once with your throat, once with your shoulder blades, once with your hands open. The sentence becomes less about knowledge and more about posture. The body believes it because the body has felt versions of it all night. Longer exhale, lower note, easier room. The fear loop arrives for its late blessing. Will expansion unmake the intimate? No, bonds hold. Atoms keep their handshakes. Families of stars keep their slow twirls. Your cup stays a cup. The widening hum is a background courtesy, not a household chore. It lives between clusters, like wind on the flats that never rattles the spoon in your tea. You are allowed to love what is near without bargaining with what is far. You imagine the capsule window and your bedroom ceiling slowly exchanging places until they're the same softened white. The watch's quiet intervals and the clock's honeyseconds blur into a single measure. Your breath, time's string, stretches and gathers with each inhale, each exhale. Elastic does not mean slippery. It means companionable. It means the music chooses the instrument with care. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You float a future fate thought without cliffs. The room keeps widening. Lanterns drift. The night remains good. No countdown hovers over the bed. What stretches is the space in which kindness can echo. The farther becoming farther does not cancel closeness. It makes room for more of it to exist at once. The galaxy next door keeps its dance. Your city keeps its mornings. Somewhere, older light adds one more cooled syllable to its story and arrives on schedule to remind yourself how simple this can be. You return to the shore of your breath. Arrival, rest, recede. The bedside clock agrees. The orbit watch agrees. The universe does not demand a single metronome. It keeps an ensemble. You are not late to it. You have been playing in it since you first learned to sleep inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The duet grows quieter until you can't tell which instrument began. Bedside clock, orbit watch, pulse beneath your finger, three keepers blending into one long kindness. Time is not a rule you obey. It is a listener you inhabit. The fabric meets you where you are and learns your breathing inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You give each open loop its closing bow, slowly like buttons fastened in reverse. First the traveler's thread, light that crosses a stretching room, lengthens, cools, and carries distance as lullaby. This was the ribbon you felt against your wrist, the note that settled lower, the color that tipped toward dusk. It is not a trick of language. It is the sky's bedside manner. The farther the lantern's journey, the more tender its tone when it arrives second, the question of stillness in a moving room. You set it on your palm and turn it once more. Yes, you can be locally still and ride the widening. The square beneath you grows, and you grow with it without taking a step. You keep your place, and your place keeps the road. Both truths hold, none hurried third. The fear that asked whether widening unthreads what we love. No, bonds hold. Atoms keep their agreements. Cups keep their rims. Families of stars keep their long patience. The drift lives between the villages, not through the kitchen. Intimacy remains a room with its own warm lamp. The background hum is courteous enough to bow at the door and hail. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You gather the empowerment promised to your quieter self. You are a time traveler already, not by conquest, by context. When you fly high, the seconds lean one way. When you rest heavy, they lean another. When you listen to elder light, you are reading a diary written in hue and tempo. None of this asks you to master anything. It asks you to notice what you are already doing beautifully. Existing in conversation with the room antithesis lays out a path you can follow barefoot. Not breaking, breathing. Not a countdown, an open hand. Not a judge, a companion. Not a finish line, a horizon that walks with you. You take each and feel how it changes the weight. You lay on the mattress. By a small, saving degree, the two clocks settle into the background, like friendly neighbors closing their doors at the same hour. Your breath remains. It is the metronome that knows both songs. In, time gathers. Out, time lengthens. Elastic time is not stretch for its own sake. It is fit, the kind of fit that lets a cello string sing full without snapping. The room has tuned you. You have tuned the room inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You let a gentle thought experiment float by, as if on the lake's surface, the room keeps widening. Lanterns drift. The night remains good. No countdown leans over the bed. The calendar will perform its usual tricks, and none of them will steal the nearby, the shorelines of meaning. You've learned tonight, breath, border of pillow, kindness of clocks, stay drawn where you need them. Meanwhile, farther out, the water makes room for more water and calls it nothing more dramatic than evening you turn once more to community, because quiet shared is quiet doubled. If your chest has softened, remember to leave a night sky memory somewhere others can find it later. A cold constellation you named without being sure, a dawn seen from a bus window, the zigzag of lit windows in a building that looked like a galaxy of ordinary lives, small offerings, long echoes. The comments become a quilt we make together, each square an hour that held return to the capsule window and the bedroom ceiling until they dissolve into the same slow whiteness. The watch's orbit and the clock's honey-second agree to meet where your lungs meet the air. With every exhale, the two images overlap a little more until there is only one soft geometry, a room-sized breath and a sky-sized breath sharing a rhythm. You begin the closing refrain and let it lengthen as it wishes. Not darkness, but depth. Not terror, but tenderness. Not chaos, but a wider room. You give each line time to find your bones. Depth settles behind the eyes. Tenderness folds around the shoulders. The wider room opens behind the heart. The cello note you've been hearing fades, not away, but into a glowing thread that loops from window to ceiling to wrist to speck, tying the hour gently shut. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You collect the capsule's teachings into a pocket-sized litany you won't need to remember because it will remember you. Time listens to where you are. Light tells where it has been. Stillness can travel bonds, keep the near the far hums. Politely repeat it once as words, once as posture. Your shoulders do the second recitation better than your tongue. The lesson lands where lessons should. Low, quiet, useful. You thank each image without ceremony. Clock, watch, ribbon, lake, lantern, quilt. They bow without leaving. They have become furniture now. You will bump into them tomorrow and call it grace. Your room has learned to breathe with the sky's patience, and the sky has learned to meet you at pillow height. There is nothing to chase. There is a thread to hold, and you are holding it. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The hour closes itself the way dusk closes a book. No snap, only a turning. Loops tied, fears gentled, names warmed. All that remains is permission. Permission to let the next breath be ordinary and discover it is also cosmic. Permission to sleep as if escorted by a kindly universe. Permission to trust that when you open your eyes, the clocks will still be friends and the fabric will still be fluent in kindness. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You return to the first room by a softer door. The room remembers how to widen without asking you to move. The ceiling remembers how to be a sky. The pillow keeps its white shore. Your breath lifts and falls like a tide that knows this coastline by heart. Nothing is urgent here. You can unravel. The day can loosen its knots without any fingers pulling. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You listen for the sentence that found you at the beginning and let it arrive unannounced. You are not still. Even now, you move through time. Not metaphorically, literally. The words land like feathers, one by one, and disappear into the blanket. You feel the truth, not as a lesson, but as posture. The mattress carries your weight. The room carries your square. The larger room carries the lanterns. Everything is being carried in scale. Appropriate kindness, light's fate returns for its closing bow and chooses a whisper instead of a trumpet. What crosses a stretching room lengthens, cools, and arrives with distance folded into tone. You've held the ribbon. You've heard the note drop half a shade. You've watched color tilt toward evening. The three are now one gesture. You know how to make with your lungs, longer, lower, redder, and then softer than red. Warmth you don't see, but you recognize the way. You recognize a loved one's step in the hall. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. Stillness inside motion comes to sit beside you like an old friend who never needs to knock. You can keep your place without marching. The square beneath you grows and you grow with it. The leaf on the river rides a wider bend by staying a leaf. The lantern on the lake drifts farther by keeping its flame. The bed does not disapprove of your traveling. It volunteers for it. You are being carried, not tested. The fear that once tapped at the window finds a chair and a cup. Will widening unmake what we love? No. Bonds cradle the near. The handshake between atoms holds. The choir of molecules keeps its pitch. Families of stars attend their slow dance. The cup is still a cup, the hand still a hand. The background hum is a gentleman. It bows at the doorway of intimacy and asks permission to pass, which it does outside between villages, where lanterns have room to correspond without crowding. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. The refrain lengthens to fit the hour. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You let each line take more space than before, like a bridge reinforced by quiet patience. On the inhale, safety stops being an idea and becomes the weight the bed is glad to hold. On the exhale, motion stops being a threat and becomes a lull, not a shove, a drift, not a deadline, a horizon that walks with you. You revisit the lake because it has learned your name. Lanterns rest in their circles. Water practices opening. None of the wishes collide. They learn to be apart together. Distance is not scolding, it is permission. Room for each flame to be seen clearly without losing warmth. The lake is more lake than yesterday. Your breath is more breath than a moment ago. You sense how belonging grows with space, when space is gentle. The capsule that has accompanied the hour trims its balance by a whisper you feel rather than hear. There is no lurch, no ceremony, only a repoise that agrees with the clock's honey-second and your ribcage's tempo. 2 keepers, 1 patience. The window the capsule offers and the ceiling above your bed begin once again to become each other. The field of view simplifies until it is almost only breath. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You give the loops their tidy stitches one at a time, not rushing the thread. Light's ribbon, closed. Stillness carried, closed. Fear answered, closed. Each closure is a gentle knot you can't feel under your cheek. Nothing cinches tight, nothing pulls. They are knots the way dusk is a knot, a gathering of color that dissolves as soon as it forms, and because endings love a sentence they can hum, you formalize the refrain again. Slower, longer, truer. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You hear how the lines have ripened since the first time you met them. Safety now has the taste of your own name spoken kindly. Motion now has the kindness of a lake, learning to be more lake. The room and the sky keep time together with the smallest metronome a human owns. You are granted one clear assurance you can put in your pocket and carry to mornings. You can unravel here. Nothing is urgent. Knowledge can sleep and still be true when it wakes. Your day can loosen its hold on itself without losing itself. The room is a companion, not a scoreboard. The universe is an accompanist, not a judge. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You notice how the hour has taught your shoulders a language your mouth doesn't need to learn. They are conversant now in slower breath, in lower note, in softer eye. The cello line that has followed you through these rooms thins to a glowing thread, not departure, continuation. It will lead you through the last door when the time comes, not by pulling, by being there to hold the doors near, but nobody is hurrying you through it. You are allowed to linger with one more remembered sentence. Featherlights and literal. You are not still. Even now, you move through time. The truth isn't a flare. It's a nightlight, and you are welcome to fall asleep by its glow. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The room leans closer without moving. Every surface knows the choreography by now. The ceiling keeps being a sky. The pillow keeps being a white shore. Your breath keeps returning as tide. Nothing on the list needs finishing. The list can sleep too. Even your careful questions have learned how to sit with their hands open. Inhale, you are safe. Exhale, you are already moving. You try the core phrase again and notice how it arrives lighter than ever, a feather that lands and becomes air. You are not still. Even now, you move through time. Not metaphorically, literally. The sentence doesn't ask for attention. It lends it. The mattress understands. The ribs understand. The soft underside of thought understands. Time is not a corridor you must run. It is a companion who adjusts stride to yours. You touch each closure like beads and let them pass through your fingers. Lights fade, lengthened and cooled, stillness amid motion, carried rather than driven, fear of unmaking, answered by bonds that cradle. The beads circle back and rest against your wrist, familiar now as the ribbon you once laid across it. The ribbon that turned into a note, that turned into a color, that turned into warmth you could feel without seeing. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You give the refrain its wider wings, slower, longer, nearer the bone. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You can let the words take their time, the way a cello lets the room learn the note before offering the next. On the inhale, safety thickens like dusk in a kind town. On the exhale, motion becomes a hush that helps you sleep. You let the lake speak on the room's behalf. Lanterns drift. Wishes do not collide. They learn to be apart together. The water opens without any lantern losing its circle. If you listen for a sound, it is the sound of permission. Even gratitude, soft and sturdy, knows how to float. The capsule keeps its quiet orbit off stage in your mind, adjusting by hair's breadths that require no announcement. The bedside clock continues to pour honey. One far, one near, one body between, 3 tempos, one lullaby. The music is not louder than you. It is tuned to you, and because endings prefer community to applause, you open a small circle where anyone who was steadied can set something transparent and true. If this calmed you, leave a quiet like, the kind that feels more like a nod than a cheer. And, if you wish, offer a small memory of night for the others who will pass through, a constellation you once misnamed and loved anyway. The window above a sink where you watched snow, the low hum of an airplane when the cabin was dark and the wingtip blinked like a distant neighbor. We build a quilt from these pieces without sewing, each square a moment that remembered you back. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The room gives you permission to imagine future rooms without bargaining with them. A future night to follow the afterglow itself across its cooled syllables, or to watch gravity, kind as linen, fold the map in patient pleats. Not an itinerary, a possibility warmed like a seat saved for you. We will not overpromise. We will leave the lamp on and the door unlatched. The biggest stories travel best when they know they will be welcomed. Slowly you return to the present, because that is where the warmth lives. The pillow's seam under your cheek is an atlas. You can navigate with your eyes closed. The atlas says, near things hold. It says, the fabric is fluent in kindness. It says, you can loosen your hand without dropping anything that matters. These are ordinary sentences, and they are sufficient antithesis. Arranges the room the way tidying clears a bedside table. Not breaking, breathing, not a countdown, an open hand, not urgency, presence, not proof, companionship. The pairs make space where worry used to stand with its coat on. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. You practice the hour's simplest craft, letting thoughts settle to the bottom like tea leaves. Nothing is forced. Gravity, small and local, does the keeping. The larger drift continues outside between lanterns, dignified and uninsistent. You do not manage the lake. The lake manages the lake. You are free to be a single warm square in a quilt that does not end. You offer one gentle reminder to the part of you that catalogs and checks. You can unravel here. Nothing is urgent. Even understanding can sleep and can still be true when it wakes. What you have gathered will not scatter if you let your grip soften. The mind is not a guard tonight. It is a guest. The refrain returns of its own accord, longer now, almost a melody you could follow out of the room and back again. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. It would be enough to end here, but the hour has one more kindness, an opening shaped like a question that doesn't require an answer. You don't speak it yet. You let the room prepare a place for it. You feel the ceiling becoming a sky again, the sky becoming breath again, the breath becoming the single hinge on which everything you need swings easily. When the question arrives, it will be light enough to set on the pillow without waking any part of you that wishes to sleep first. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The last door opens the way eyelids do. By lowering, nothing leaves. It simply becomes softer. The ceiling is a sky again. The pillow is a white shore. Your breath is tide returning to itself. The room keeps its promise. You can unravel here. Nothing is urgent. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The hour gathers its threads and places them in your hands one by one. Lights fade, already calm. What crosses a stretching room lengthens and cools and arrives carrying distance as lullaby. Stillness amid motion, already learned. The square beneath you travels. You keep your place and are carried. Fear of unmaking already answered. Bonds cradle the near. The background hum minds its manners in the far. You turn each thought once and it lies flat, peaceful as folded linen. You try the sentence that once felt like a revelation and find it now behaves like breath. You are not still. Even now you move through time, not metaphorically, literally. The words make no demand. They simply keep you company. Time matches your pace the way a good friend does when the sidewalk narrows. Half a step slower, then the same inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The refrain extends, wider, slower, deeper, like a bridge you trust, even with your eyes closed. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. On the inhale, safety gathers behind the ribs, like dusk pooling in a kind town. On the exhale, motion is a hush that carries you farther into rest. You don't hold the lines up, the lines hold you. You return to the lake for the final check. The lanterns have not bumped. They have learned to be apart together. Every flame keeps its circle. Every circle keeps its warmth. Water opens and keeps opening. The farther spaces are not empty of meaning. They are wide with permission. You notice gratitude brightening, not louder, clearer, because distance, kindly kept, can make seeing easier. The capsule that has watched from the edge of attention accepts the night's new balance. There is no announcement, just a drift, an orbit agreeing with a heartbeat. The bedside clock continues its honey-second, the kind that doesn't tell you what to do so much as remind you of what you are already doing well. 3 keepers, lake, capsule, clock, nodding to the same metronome you keep without trying. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. If you have a small offering for the quilt we are making, leave it softly, a quiet like, a memory of night, a glow seen from a window over water, a highway ribbon you followed home under a patient moon, a childhood ceiling where you first learned the shapes. We are not collecting trophies. We are collecting rest. You plant the series seed without pressing it into the soil. Sometime, on a future night, we may follow the afterglow itself, let it guide us along its cooled syllables, or we may watch gravity fold the map through gentle lenses and see how seeing can be a kindness. No itinerary, only a lamp left on and a seat kept warm. The stories will come when the room is ready. You will already be here. You close your palm and feel how much can be held without tightening. The hour gives you one more sentence, shaped like a door left ajar. When you breathe, what feels bigger tonight? That space expands or that your heart can hold it. You don't answer aloud. The room answers by deepening. Your chest answers by lowering the note another shade. The lake answers by making more. Lake inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The loops tie themselves in the order the body prefers. First the shoulders, then the jaw, Then the eyes, the cello line you've carried fades by vanishing, resolution not as chord but as belonging. No flourish remains, only the sense that every metaphor has taken off its costume and become furniture. Ribbon as breath, lake as permission, clock as kindness, capsule as trust. The lantern of the room dims and does not argue with the dark. The lake is still widening. The capsule drifts into night unobserved and perfectly seen. The listener, that is you, falls through a door of breath into sleep. Not down, not away, through. The way a thought becomes a dream, becomes a morning inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The refrain repeats once more, longer than before, until it is almost only air. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. And because endings are best when they leave a hand to hold, the hour leaves you this small litany you won't need to keep. The room will keep it for you. Light lengthens and cools. It arrives kindly, stillness can travel. You are carried bonds, cradle the near. The far hums politely, time listens. Breath conducts you, do not memorize it, you inherit it. The quilt of offered memories tucks along your shoulder. The window is only a ceiling now. The ceiling is only breath. The sky is comfortable being both inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving. The note is gone. The belonging stays. What remains is a room you can trust and a lake that will widen whether or not anyone is watching. Sleep knows the path. You are on it. Inhale. You are safe. Exhale. You are already moving.